Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 460. Our month celebrating a decade of the show kicks off. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Let's take a moment of silence for Muck Muck. So says the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we are going to be talking about the most recent issue of Green Arrow. We're going to talk about Green Lantern Corps Edge of Oblivion. We're going to talk about the most recent issue of Superman, Batman, and also Justice League number 48. We also talk about the most recent episode, the kicking off of the second half of our season of Gotham. So it's a very packed episode. And without further ado, we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. What's a partnership?
Partnership. Yeah.
It's a very soft and loving partnership. Jim, we are sponsored this episode by DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What is going on over at DCBService.com?
Bundles. They're continuing their support of the Vertigo title, so thank you very much. All 12 of the Vertigo issues. It's 50% off, only $23.88. Plus, they got a cool variant bundle. It's a new 52 homage to, it's a special variant, the homage to the new 52. It's 11 of the titles. You're going to get 45% off, only $22.44.
Over at InStockTrades.com. It's such an amazing list. Their deals of the week is insane. They've got the Black Canary trade paperback volume 1. That's the current Black Canary series, 50% off, only $7.49. They've got DC Superhero Girls, Wonder Woman at Superhero High hardcover, 40% off, only $8.39. They've got the DC Comics Bombshells trade paperback. This is the digital series, volume 1, 50% off, only $8.49. Besides that, in the deals of the week, they have, for Marvel fans, the Civil War box set, slipcase hardcover. This huge box set, 45% off, only $275. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, but if you look at the that's 45% off is $275. I don't know how you'd even consider, like in my case, I'm like, budget-wise, I couldn't even consider it unless there was a discount. I'm a big fan of Frank Miller's Daredevil work and Elektra work. They have Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. It's the omnibus. It's 50% off, only $62.50. They have Elektra by Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz. 50% off, only $50. These are huge, tremendously cool volumes. If you're a Frank Miller fan and you haven't read these, this is the time to catch these. InStockTrades.com is your source for collected editions. If there's something you're looking for, it's the spot to shop. They have everything at amazing discount prices. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting us over the last 10 years. Remember, they are a digital partner. If you go to DCBService.com and link your Comixology account or your MyDigitalComics.com account and shop through their portals on their website, you earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB service order. And you're going to want to do that because it adds up quickly. It doesn't cost you anything more. Plus, it helps our show sponsor. Mr. Sagalin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's take that moment of silence for Muck Muck and then talk some comics.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
Our first discussion this episode is going to be Green Arrow number 49. Benjamin Percy is on the script. Seisman, it's SZYMONKUDRANSKI on art. I don't want to butcher his name. Gabe Eltaeb, ELTAEB on colors. Rob Lay letters. Seisman Kudransky on the cover. Neil Adams, Jim Lee, Alex Sinclair on the variant cover. Brian Cunningham, group editor, and Harvey Richards is the editor. Apologies for any name butchery. I really wanted to talk about this book because I am loving Green Arrow right now. I love the stories that are here. This has kind of been my experience with Green Arrow. As a creative team settles in on this book, I really start to enjoy their direction and get what they're doing with Ollie. I like what they're doing with the creative, direction of his Team Arrow. I like, we got Fife, we got Emiko. All the elements are in place here. I love the fact that he's carrying this, werewolf virus inside of him. Because what this plays off of is we've all got this dream of being bitten by a radioactive spider. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, as far as I talk about how much I love Batman, equally, I loved Spider-Man the same way. I loved Spider-Man's cartoons. That old 60s Spider-Man cartoon, Spider-Man. I grew up with that. Loved seeing him on Electric Company. Loved Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And Marvel Team Up was another one of my linchpin titles that I read. So I'm a big Spidey fan. So that dream of being bit by a radioactive spider and getting these powers, being able to climb walls, spin webs, do all that kind of stuff fits. This is what happens when that goes wrong. And I really love that part of this storyline because it plays off of, Ollie gets that kind of internal drama and emotion that's going on with him that, I love this. Look, I'm stronger now. I'm faster now. My senses are out there. But there is it's like Jekyll and Hyde. There's that negative piece to it. I love the drama of this story because it's classic Ollie. If somebody's going to get bit by this and have to deal with the drama of it, it's going to be Ollie. And there's going to be pieces where things go a little bit skewed because of the humanity of Ollie. And that's what I think we love about him, right? He's a guy, he's like a real person. I love this storyline right now. That's my feeling, though. Where are you at on Green Arrow right now? Where does it fall, reading-wise, for you?
Werewolf of Seattle. Been dying to sing that. No, I'm digging Arrow. I'm digging Ollie, and a lot of stuff you said with with just the wolf in him and that animal and the embracement that he has. Because I love the past couple of issues. He's been looking at this gift, and I'm doing air quotes around the word gift, by the way. This gift that he got in this power, and I love the fact that Ollie's recognizing that he's faster, he's stronger. There's something more to him, and it's that kind of that neat, just that mindset where he's like, I'm in control of this. Really, I am. He's a junkie, and I love the fact that is the kind of things where he thinks he's in control of the wolf, he thinks he's in control of the animal in him, and he looks at how the positive stuff he can do with that, where he's not just the guy shooting arrows now, he is in himself just this physical form of weapon. And I like just how he's looking at that, but his people around him are recognizing, no, you're not in control, dude. This is not a good thing. And it's the last couple of issues, especially with him in isolation and just how he's coming to grips with everything going on. Plus also this whole wargs, the overarching story arc, that they've been going through with these patriots and the wargs, and just who is the good guy, who's the bad guy, what's right, what's wrong. I love just that when you take a concept of these bad guys that we have in here, technically, if you twist one little thing, they're not bad people. But it's that one little twisting in them. It's that one little tweak on them. The fact that they're willing to kill innocent people. The fact that they're not willing to give people another chance. There's no tolerance whatsoever in them. That's where that crossing the line over. And I think that's kind of a neat thing where you have these people saying these patriotic things that, if given a completely different circumstances, the exact words they're saying would be considered, oh, this is a really good group of guys. Well, we know they're not a good group of people because we've seen that how far, and when you start twisting, when you take a dark turn on what they're preaching, it's kind of a neat concept of this group.
I agree. That part is really what's striking me on this one. Is one of the best things about Green Arrow has always been his liberal politics, and where you get to see different political structures brought into his world, and finding a balance of that while keeping the great action, while keeping the great character drama of Ollie, and having him juggle all of these things. And the businessman. I love that he had to juggle the businessman in this, and how the wolf side taking over caused the deal to go horribly wrong. Whereas if he just stayed put, there's people who died because of the fact that he took action at the wrong time, because he lost control. And I really loved that piece of this drama, how there's this business deal, this is an opportunity for Queen Industries. That went wrong because Ollie couldn't be patient. And because of what was going on inside him. Go ahead.
Well, and even before that,
Oh, yeah.
you start seeing it breaking down because Ali is completely, a million miles away. And I loved how his boss is like, hey, his partner's like, hey, come on, man. Did you even shower? Does this mean anything to you? I love just how right there in that moment, you kind of see him a little straggly, but that confirmed to us 100% that Ali didn't even clean up for this meeting. So I love just how it's not just even because, yes, the fact that he couldn't control himself, he had to lash out at the guy who was, probably considering, given the tattoos and the various, ornaments on the guy, he probably was a gangster. He probably was a bad person. He probably was a killer. But at that point in time, Ali was, Ali should have focused on the task at hand, made a mental note, and then come back later and taken out the guy. I love just how the fact that we see that, we see the wolf taking over and the wolf making a mistake, really. Yes, this guy is a bad guy, but what was he really doing? Ali had no evidence against this guy other than the tattoos.
True. Very, very true.
I loved seeing the fact that, again, this is the wolf reacting. And to be honest, let's be blunt. This guy could just be a guy with tattoos who thinks it looks cool.
No. Because remember, Ali's able to detect certain other things. Kraken, a Korean gangster who recently took control of the Seattle ports to smuggle drugs, women, and weapons. He remained on the other side of the Pacific until now. He knew the tattoos. He was actually to be able to pin down this is a bad guy. That's not totally fair. Ali was, because of his heightened senses, he was able to recognize exactly and pin down who this person is. So this isn't like some, mistaken identity thing. Ali knew this guy was bad news and this was ultimately going to lead to trouble. So that part I agree with. It was more of the impulsive nature of not planning properly, which Ali has a lot of that in him already. This kicked it up to 11. That became the problem. So I don't think this isn't a case of we spoke too soon on the person. We spoke too soon on the timing is the issue here.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's kind of interesting how the guy that Ali's meeting for the business is the one who gets shot.
Oh, I know. It was and it's the older one
because the person died, but it is kind of interesting that guy is solely in that restaurant to meet Oliver Queen and he gets shot. Because of Oliver Queen. And I want to see how Ali deals with that factor and that information. And, that's the kind of stuff that, because, we know Ali holds on to guilt, especially when he knows he's in the wrong, when he realizes, yes, I messed up. That guy's blood is on Ali's hands as much as on Kraken's hands. Kraken may have pulled the trigger, but Ali instigated the events that led to it.
And remember, those bullets were made for Ali. The ones that were fired, Ali flipped over them. So that guy got shot specifically because of the fact that wrong place, wrong time. But though if Ali, again, hadn't acted at that moment, and this is a bad dude. So really, it is Kraken's fault. But Ali is a piece to the puzzle because of the fact that he chose to act in a situation where there were innocents nearby. That's something when, there's that whole thing about what's the difference between a vigilante and a police officer. Police are trained to protect the public in those situations. A vigilante, not so much. So it's a very different, that's where the blurry line comes in. And I actually love when comics touch on this stuff because of the fact that you can argue Ali's doing this for the right reasons, being Green Arrow and what he's trying to do and what he's trying to accomplish to help, the city out. And I believe in that. But there's that part where you're like, this is where it's illegal and why. It's very hard to argue with that when you see a sequence like this because it really justifies that to the point where, this is an issue of he's not trained. And obviously, Ali in his normal mode would have reacted very differently than Ali in this mode, I think. It's interesting to see this bit. I would be remiss in this sequence if I didn't talk about the artwork. Because this book, and it's one of the reasons why I spelled out the name. I know I probably did a lot of name butchery on the whole creative team, including the colors. I really love the look of this book. This book has really enjoyed throughout its run. Really terrific art. I'm talking about from the beginning of the New 52 straight on through. This art team is really doing a nice job. I love this action sequence with the car. Ali comes smashing out of the window. I love that he still looks like Ali, even in wolf form. There's that hybrid where you can still tell it's the same guy, but you got this car blaring at him with Kraken. Kraken's guy driving it. Ollie does this acrobatic, and I love sequences like this where you manage to do this like acrobatic motion where he flips around, does this overarching backflip, but it even looks like, because of the speed of it and the length of the vehicle, he almost doesn't make it. Like by the trunk where you see the head going towards that. I loved the reality of that. Like, it wasn't perfectly clean, but it did show that these heightened senses and the heightened acrobatic ability enabled him to be able to do that timing-wise to the point where he wound up surviving that. That landing that he does at the end, leading right into the arrow, the trank arrow, I thought it was just a beautiful sequence of events. I did not see the trank arrow coming at that time. I loved how that played out because everything was kind of so fluid, and it was like, oh yeah, and this. And that part was like, I was like, oh, what a cool timing for that. Cause I saw her getting involved at some point. I didn't see it then. And I really liked being surprised by that. I thought that was really a clever use of how that all played out.
And I echo everything you said about the artwork, and I absolutely agree with you 100%. But the one page that really got me was right before that in the restaurant fight sequence.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had that beautiful non-traditional panels on that one page where you get that cool close-up. It's right when Ollie is confronting him in the bathroom. And you flip the page, you got that one scene where it's Ollie and him face-to-face. They go back to the business meeting, and then the initial crash where they're coming out. And it was a really great, just again, nice, awesome action sequence coming through the walls, coming through the glass window, whatnot, and just everything breaking up. Again, this was some really neat look to it. And it was funny because you look at that image of Ollie in wolf format, like you said, he doesn't completely lose Ollie, but he kind of loses Ollie. And in a way, they may be able to say that that's not Ollie Queen. Ollie his secret identity may be slightly covered there and protected, but it's going to be a tough sell because you think about it, the one business guy does get shot. Okay, so don't have to worry about him, but he has his partner who saw them crash through, and then Ollie's got his business partner there that saw him crash through. So I want to know if anybody where this is going to go in the future with them knowing Ollie Queen's a wolf type of guy.
Remember, though, we're seeing it in flat, static action, not fast-moving action. So it can be argued that everything happened so quick and with everything happening around them that they didn't see it, and I wouldn't have any issue with that explanation. Yeah. Now, to your point, they could also go the other route with it and say that they saw something. There's one thing on that page I want to point out, because I love that page you're talking about, too. You talk about non-traditional panels. They're actually glass shards.
Yeah.
And that part I really liked because they're crashing through, and actually every now and then something comes along. When you see that sequence and that crash you're talking about, that's actually a glass shard because you can see the three-dimensional nature of the shard outlined in how the panel is. But also, if you look at the other glass shards, the action is actually occurring in the other glass shards. And that part I thought was a really great tiny detail that they put in because like a reflective mirror, those glass shards are reflecting the action that are going on around it. I just really, those were small details, but to me it just added this really cool sense of, wow. This book has really wowed me on the art. I really think that the art team is perfect for a Green Arrow book. They've really understood the theme and the tone, the color scheme that's perfect for this. I mean, it really is everything that I want to feel in a Green Arrow title. I go back to the Grell stuff as being things. Longbow Hunters was one that really changed the game for me on Green Arrow back in the day. I loved Green Arrow as a character before then, but that was the one where it's kind of like, that was that whole era where, we had people like Alan Moore shaking things up, Frank Miller shaking things up. Mike Grell did it with Green Arrow, and this thematically is how I see Green Arrow now. I love this kind of intense action. Really well done artwork, and I agree with you on the page that you chose. It actually is. It's a tremendous page.
Oh god, yeah. And I tell you, Emiko, I absolutely love that character. She's one I hope sticks around and they still have her in there because you are so dumb. D-U-M dumb. She cracks me up. And I love the fact that when he put her in high school and made her start to go to this regular high school, and the whole time she's hates it. Now she's starting to get it. Now she's starting to understand, and she's actually starting to semi quasi enjoy it. And it's one of those things where I'm so happy that this character, again, she's getting a chance to grow and develop as a person. She's not just going to be the one-sided assassin, kind of a female version of Damien. No, she's actually they're going to let her be her own character, let her be her own person. So she's one of those characters that when everything, happens, I hope she's still around, because I'm really digging her, and I want to see more of these two interaction.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually like the fact that they don't feel beholden to the TV show. I adore the TV show. I think tone-wise, this matches what I like about the TV show. But I want to read different stories in the comics. I want to feel like I know who the character is and what they're doing with them. But I like that this feels different. It feels like its own universe, and it's not beholden to that. It's a smart move. I've liked when they brought in characters from the TV series into this book. I loved the use of Diggle in this book. I loved how they used Felicity in this book. So I'm not against that at all. So don't take me wrong on that one. But to me, Emiko and the Wolf, you cannot. They're necessary.
Oh yeah, George is awesome.
George rocks.
He's a character. It's funny because you talk about the dog being a character, and he is. When they first introduced him, I figured, oh, okay, just a throwaway. But oh no, George is part of this team now, and he's going forward, and he's one of the ones I hope we don't lose as well, because it's kind of neat seeing, to see the when they do the right story with him, and they actually give him an actual character and a part. And there's times when you're looking, going, does the wolf know what's going on? Does he actually know what's going on here? And I like that when you get those moments where you have an animal that, okay, is there something else going on here with this guy? Because you never know in the comic book universe. Maybe the dog does have a little bit more going on than we think.
You know what? I love the fact, though, that it reads like a real dog. It's just this, the loyalty, the fact that they're like, the whole man's best friend thing always works for me in comics. I have 2 cats. I love pets. I've grown up with a dog. I had an Alaskan Husky Labrador mix when I was growing up. Loved that dog. Dog's name was Sparky. I don't know. I love pets. And one of the things I love about them is you build this kind of relationship, and they all have their own unique personalities and stuff like that. This so works in this book. And whether the character's in the foreground or winds up being in the background, I would be irritated if they wrote this one out.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that I find that it's added some really unique personality to the book, especially in this particular story arc that they're doing right now. Really, this is a creative team that, I know that we're doing Rebirth and all that. I'm hoping this creative team may be able to stick around with this character, just because I really think they got it.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to concur on that statement, just because, again, we talked about artwork, but also the story that they're laying out here. This team is hitting a home run for me in Green Arrow. So, again, I'd like to see them stay on, or if we get another new creative team, learn from what we got here and continue this story going forward. Don't just completely whitewash and start over with Green Arrow. You got a nice foundation. Let's keep it going.
I want to run. I really want a long run. And I think this team is developing something that I want to see in a long run. I think it's been consistent with this book. It's like right when I'm getting attached, swap out creative teams. I want a long run. This book needs it. So I don't know. I'm really happy with the current creative direction of Green Arrow because of this. I love at the end when, he realizes, like, okay, Supermax is out. This is the catalyst to a war between 2 different factions. And he's like, I don't know, I agree with either of them. And it's, which is very timely right now, because, there's a lot of that going on where there's, these big, huge extremist battles on both sides in our own politics right now. Forget politics, just the world condition in general. And it's kind of like, I don't know who I agree with on either side of this. And that's becoming, I think, a very common, this is a contemporary issue, I think, that's going on in this particular book right now. And I love when art imitates life. I think Green Arrow's doing that right now. I really am connecting with this storyline. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I see that a lot now. And I'm glad that the comic's addressing it. He's kind of like, no, listen, you're both wrong.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because who do you root for in this situation?
Yes.
Man? Yeah, you want them just to both take each other out, but that's the problem. They never just take each other out.
No.
There's always going to be that collateral damage. There's always going to be those innocents who get caught up in the middle, and that's who you're fighting. So now you've got you're going to have to fight a two-front battle.
And remember, with extremists, there's always moderate people that are following along with them that maybe believe in certain elements of what they're doing, but they've also become victims in the whole thing. So, just because there's something they latched onto and they're believing in, they're following something that they think is what they should be following, but in the end, they're not really, you mentioned the fact that these guys are bad. There's people that are sure following them that have no clue that they've taken things to this level. You know what I mean? And they would back off immediately the second that they found out this is happening. Where it's like, oh yeah, I believe in them and all. Those are usually the people that get hurt, either emotionally or psychologically or physically.
They're the red shirts of that group.
Exactly. And that's what ends up happening. They didn't know, they weren't clued in to just the depths that this had gone to. And they would have been the first people that would have been said, this isn't my cup of tea. I'm out. This isn't what I signed on for. I like that kind of stuff because I think that's very true to reality as well. And I don't know, it's just this title really is nailing a home run. You and I are big fans of the team arrow concept. I think you got to do that well though, where Ollie is your central figure like this, and that's just happening really, really well. Emiko, I couldn't agree more on where this character has gone. She was interesting at the beginning because I'm like, how I feel about her when I first saw her. I mean, I'm like, I get the storyline. It's kind of cool right now, but I don't know. I don't know that there were characters that I was missing, I think, that are traditional in the Green Arrow universe that I was like, you really need to plug them back in. Now I don't know. I wouldn't bump her out for anybody right now. I would add other characters to the book, sure, but I wouldn't bump her out. She's earned her place. Yeah. And I think your Damien comparison's really good there in the sense that Damien was the brat that like you wanted on a time limit when he initially started. Now I adore him. She's the same way become a character that I really adore because she's so unique.
And she's actually a character that I want more of her in the book. Yes. I want to see her out patrolling with Ollie. I want to see these moments because that was just a great scene when she's sitting there and just one takes him down with a tranq arrow, and then two, starts injecting him with the antitoxin whatnot, that keeps things at bay. It doesn't cure Ollie yet. They're still working on the cure, but it's going to keep the wolf at bay. And I like the fact that she's there and she recognizes, hey, you think you're okay because you're not yourself. That's the thing. You think everything's fine because you can't see who you really are. And it was a great moment for her to just take control of the situation, inject him, and she's going to be there along the ways with him. I want to see these two patrol. I want to see them go to war with with both of the two groups. I want to see how she handles it. And there's so much more we can get out of her in this story arc, in future story arcs, that I want to see those.
I agree with you 100%. Hey, do you want to jump to Green Lantern Corps, Edge of Oblivion, the second issue?
Oh, God, yeah. Next discussion is on Green Lantern Corps, Edge of Oblivion, issue number 2. The writer is Tom Taylor, with artist Ethan Van Sciver. Jason Wright is colorist. Dave Sharp on letters, with Van Sciver and High Five on color. Andrew Marino is the assistant editor, Mike Cotton is editor, and Eddie Berganza, group editor.
I want to compliment Tom Taylor because it just seems like he's a writer that they seem to bring in on these titles where they need to kind of wrap things up, because of creative changes or things like that. This is a writer who just really does the research on where the story was going, what the direction was, obviously puts his own spin on what's going on, because you kind of have to do that as a writer if you're going to do it well. You don't want to be the light version of the previous writer, but he doesn't ignore what came before. And I think that's really some good fan service as far as just understanding there are people reading this who this is really important to. I was very sad that the last book was canceled and that it wasn't given a chance to finish its run. So this is really, when I see this writer involved in things like this, I'm like, this takes the sting out of it a bit for me in what was a direction that I was enjoying, to have a writer come on that just is really solid at taking care of things like this. I think, and when I say that, I don't want to diminish what Tom Taylor does, because Tom Taylor's somebody now, because of the fact that this has happened so many times where Tom Taylor's come in and hit a home run, I'm like, I'll follow a title that Tom Taylor's writing because I really like the writing style of this writer. This is the writer that took over Earth 2 and did such a great job. I thought just such a great job with that. So I don't know. I really enjoy seeing Tom Taylor on a book, and I would I hope in the Rebirth that there is a spot for Tom Taylor there. I hope there's a book to follow Tom Taylor on, because really did a great job, I thought, of honoring what I really was enjoying in the series that was canceled leading up to this. So yeah. I don't know. This is a story that this miniseries I've been highly anticipating, and I'm really loving the direction of it, and also the way that it utilizes the fact you've got so many lanterns with so many different philosophies that their way of reacting to this, they're trapped in a whole other universe that is dying around them. And they're faced with some really big moral decisions that you're going to naturally fall on the other side of. This is something where your closest friends are going to have issues, because you can't help but see this in very unique ways depending on personal philosophy. Slight variations in your philosophy or mine. I could see you and I butting heads over this. I mean, because of the fact, and I don't mean that in a negative way about either of us, I think it's one of those, this is monumental. They've got to make quick decisions without having a time to really debate it. Whereas you and I think as friends, one of the strengths of our friendship is we can debate things out. We'll hear each other during the debates. And no matter how long it takes, we'll eventually understand each other's side, come to a compromise that we're both happy with because of that. Where we'd butt heads on this would be, we wouldn't have the time to do that. Right. If we butted heads. If we agreed out of the get-go, we would be fighting together towards that common direction. If we didn't, though, we wouldn't have the time to debate this out. I could see you and I butting heads over an issue like this because of the time. Yeah,
that's an issue that I think they're really addressing well in the story. You know, and because you talk about just great story being created and crafted, and I'm completely in agreement with you, and I'm nodding my head. And yes, I want to see him writing more regular books. I'd love to see him continuing in the Green Lantern Corps,
sure,
because he really's got a good grip on when you're writing for a multiple cast like this. It's very easy to get tied up just in one single person and not let the story flow through others. But you see throughout this, we've got bits here, boom, 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 multiple people throwing in their 2 cents, multiple people comments, and going forward. And I think that for me shows a really cool just connection on who these people are, their dialogue, their interaction, because especially I'm loving the bits between, obviously with Guy and John and, Kilowog, the 3 big powerhouses, who would have the strongest position, but you still have others. You got Simon throwing in his comments. You got these, the super big giant tall people. You got them throwing in their comments. You've got the citizens. You've got the bad guys. You've got all this, kind of what could be a chaotic story really getting laid out and flowing through nicely to the point where you may not know a person's name, but you can recognize and understand, okay, that's kind of cool that they're getting tied in. That's cool that they're bringing that person into this. So...
Oh, sorry, I was having some muck broth.
Yeah, poor fish guy. And they really got him good too. That was opening, seeing the skeletal remains of him. That's not good.
It was muck. I was glad to see Simon Baz. This is a character who I think has fallen really into the background, and we haven't gotten an opportunity to see much of this character. I was glad to see in this particular miniseries that we're seeing a little more opportunity to focus on him a bit. Kind of like, hey, remember me? Because I really like the character, so I was glad to see him take a spotlight in this on some level. I think this book really does have a nice balance of some of the main lanterns, but also some of the background lanterns, the characters that we haven't seen in a while, and really address them. I love the idea that you see these otherworldly characters. If you look at the nature of what the Green Lantern Corps is, Kilowog lost his world, right? And he's the last of his race. So he understands what that's like. And when he sees another planet doomed to this, he can't ignore that. This is where personal experience a lot of times will direct. You're looking at the fact that you and the Green Lantern Corps need to get back to your own universe. This world is going to die. There's nothing you can do about that. There is a time bomb in this world by the nature of it's one world or the other. That in and of itself really goes against core philosophy, where as a group they try to save people. They try to police and make things right, and it's kind of the nature of what you do as heroes, right? When you start throwing in all these different alien races, though, right from wrong, and religious philosophy and background and everything that makes you a well-rounded person is going to be slightly different. And it goes off of, what really is good and what really is standing by a code of some sort. I get into this type of title in particular when it really plays off of that strong, where you can go, you know what, this is really true to this character. And they're really putting something out on the table where I get why this character's acting this way. I get why this character believes that. And it's adding a dimension to this story for me that is making me really enjoy it to a level that I didn't expect. That's happening here with this. I love the whole Kilowog sequences. And I actually find myself siding with Kilowog because I'm like, I couldn't. How do you doom a planet when you know you have an opportunity to save them? Plus, you got giant people.
It's what you do. Right. This is who they are. It's, protect and serve. And I love the fact that there's no way he was going to back down from this. And that was, again, as I said, great characterization, great usage of him. But then I loved when the bad guys do their suicide run, destroying the engines. And again, it looks like this is the end of it all, but, in comes Jon Stewart. But the best part about this whole sequence for me was Jon had the idea, but he knew he wasn't the right person to lead them to do it. I love how he's like, I need builders, I need engineers with me. And then when Steel rolls up, he goes, no, you're leading us when we get inside to the repair. I love the fact that Jon had the plan, but he knew, okay, I've got to delegate this. Steel is a living machine. He's going to be better at to actually know what we need to do to build this. The rest of us are builders. We'll construct what he needs. And I thought that was a great usage of, again, great usage of the core, great usage of their strength, great usage of all these different people. While that's going on, the others are trying to seal up or at least slow down the gap. I love I love when you get a writer who understands the concept of the core and understands the concept of what they do and how they do it. This has been just a great Green Lantern core story for me.
Osmos and Dismas keep Marniel secret. Now, they are of this planet. They're the last survivors of their race, and they're trying to save this planet. They've, kind of become godlike to these people. They're protective of them. But they realize that there is a very tentative alliance between the peoples of this world. Some of them believe in them, some of them believe in Marniel, and right now they recognize that with everything going on right now, we need to work together. We can't afford confrontation. Were they right to keep it secret?
It's a tough call because in the end, no, but when they first met the Lanterns, when do you bring it up?
Right.
And I think, they took this time and recognized, yes, we got to let them know what's going on here. Before this, I can understand their mindset, why they wouldn't say anything. If I was in their shoes, I probably would have done the exact same thing as they did. We're not saying what exactly is going on here. Let's see if it plays out. See if the addition of the Lanterns maybe is going to keep them at bay. But again, the opposite side of that always is knowledge is power. When you're dealing with stuff, the more you know, the better off you are. And, if the Lanterns had known about them from the very beginning, maybe they would have done a more preemptive defensive positioning. Had Lanterns out patrolling regularly, protecting, the ship, protecting the engines, or actively, on a security measure. Instead of one Lantern flying off by themselves, they'd have they'd fly off in teams of 3 or 2 or something. So, on each side, you can always say you should have, would have, could have done it, but I understand why they did it, and I don't knock them too. I don't have really any negative towards them, even though we did lose Muck over it.
That's right. Yeah. I think they were damned if they do, damned if they don't. I think there would have been major problems if they had brought that up, and I think the core would have been even more divided by the fact that that was an issue on the table without getting to know their potential allies. I think now, bringing it up, it's still an issue, but I think they know the people they're dealing with a little better. so it softened the blow. I don't know. I don't know what you do in this case. Speaking of beautiful art, first of all, we've spoken for years about how much we love the artwork of Ethan Van Sciver, but also Jason Wright on colors. Obviously for years on Secret Six, that was a colorist that we were like, whoa. But this page, with the creative team on it, where there's that rift in space, and they see that there. I think that page is absolutely stunning. I know you kind of go to character pieces and action pieces all the time, but there's very often where you see like something that looks like it actually belongs in outer space. That actually almost looks like a photograph when I'm looking at it, something you'd see out of a telescope. And that's why I'm marveling at it, just because I really thought the combination of the artistic drawing of it, but the color work on there is just, I think, stunning, because it does look like a space object. It'd be something on a telescope. You're like, dude, you got to check this out. Look at the colors on that. And it's something like you see, like in a cool sunrise or sunset, or, like I said, a telescope. I don't know. I just thought that was pretty mind-blowingly cool.
Oh God, yeah. I agree with you. And it's funny because I do get caught up a lot of times in his artwork on especially facial expressions. I love the way he'll do the face, but sometimes you do have to look at some really cool backgrounds and just the big bold pictures that they'll create. And this is an outstanding art team. I don't think Ethan Van Sciver is finishing up Edge of Oblivion. I read somewhere that he's getting pulled off to do some other project, and somebody else is taking over, for the finishing of this, which I don't know who is taking over for him. It's going to be those are going to be some tough shoes to fill, because again, he is an absolute phenomenal artist. So yeah, it's one of those like, wow, especially again, these sequences of the core of all these different races, these different beings, these close-ups of Kilowog. I absolutely love how he draws Kilowog.
I do too.
But I can't even just say Kilowog, because some of the coolest John Stewart sequences aren't when. I love it when John has the big constructs and the big detailed architectural stuff, but there's those times when you just see him knuckle up and you're like, oh yeah, John's throwing down now. And they do that great intensity on his face that you're like, okay, John's throwing down. John's kicking some butt right now. And I love, again, that's the same thing with that same art style.
Now, that whole sequence with Arisia and Badge.
No.
Yeah, well.
Badge is awesome, man.
But do you think they're dead?
I'm hoping not. I'm hoping the riff is what actually sends them back to their time.
I think so too.
And that Arisia and Badge are back in the regular universe. But I'm guessing we're not going to see them again for a couple issues. They're going to assume that they're dead, and we're not going to get I'm assuming story-wise we're not going to get confirmation of them, being alive until later. And I hope that God I'm right, and I hope that Badge is still alive, because Arisia is also a cool character. I'm not knocking Arisia, but Badge is, for some reason, man, I do dig the squirrel, squirrel power. Every time they pull him in, I absolutely crack up with the guy, and I like that he's not just a goofy, comic relief. He's a good lantern. He knows what he's doing, but he's in that little squirrel body, so it's kind of it does crack me up.
Yeah, the whole thing, it's kind of like Rocket Raccoon in Guardians, where Rocket's very effective, and yet he adds the comic relief, but yet he does these cool things that make you remember, oh yeah, and I mean, there's a lot going on there, and he's actually an effective member of the team. You can see why you'd want to have him on the team. So you get the same thing with Badge. I mean, I like characters like that, where you can laugh and smile and get the humor, but the endearing part of them is like, this is really an effective member of this team. And I like that as well. I don't know, this whole thing was really outstanding. Guy Gardner's reaction, I thought those pages where you saw the shift in his facial expression over what happened, from shock to realization to then anger leading to the punch, I thought that buildup was absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait to see where that goes.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, that sequence with Guy, that close-up of his face when he's yelling Arisia and Badge.
Right.
I love the look on his face right there. Again, facial expressions that when they do them, this is one of those like, whoa, man, you see his pain, you see his fear, everything that isn't Guy Gardner, you see in that moment. I love when, kind of Guy lets down the bravado and lets down the guard, and you really see the true emotion in Guy. I think that's awesome.
I think what amazes me is the way that artists are able to do that, where they do it within the facial expressions of that character, where it doesn't look like another character's face.
Yeah.
It's that character's face going through those emotions, because there's different nuances to each character's face, and to be able to create that sense of reaction from various different characters, even though it's the same reaction, it's still you're dealing with a different person, and being able to distinguish them, I think, is something that's incredibly interesting, especially when you get into aliens.
Yeah.
Because you see that stuff in Kilowog. If you look at when he's saying Gardner, they're gone, you see the consoling concern for a friend, which, Kilowog typically is your, kind of brute, kind of, this is the way I carry myself, poozer, those type of things. To see him in that moment where you see the compassion and concern on his face, especially with all that's going on in that face, I don't know, I really thought that was fantastic. And the reaction to the punch.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. When you end an issue with a punch like that, oh my God, do I want to see what happens next?
Absolutely.
Because on one hand, I can understand Kilowog understanding, Guy's rage, but on the other hand, there's, I don't know. I think we're gonna get a Gardner Kilowog throwdown.
I agree. Can we talk Justice League number 48?
Yeah.
Now, this is Justice League number 48 that we're going to be talking about, and I actually want to, before I go into the creative team, it announces that it's part 8 on the front, but this is actually Act 3, Chapter 2, Crime Pays of the whole Darkseid War thing. I think that the reason why it stands out for me is just this feels epic, and I really want to talk about that after I talk about the creative team. But Jeff Johns is the writer, Jason Fabak is the artist, Brad Anderson on colors, Rob Lay letters, Fabak and Anderson on the cover, Scott Collins the coloring book variant cover, Amadeo Turturro, assistant editor, Brian Cunningham, group editor, Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family, The New Gods created by Jack Kirby. And, as you take a look at this particular book, one of the things that I'm really loving about this is the epic nature. This is big storytelling. I loved Legion stories when they got into these big epic kind of tales that just kind of spun on for a whole year, and they felt big. And, this story has been going on for a long time, but I've never felt like the pace was off. It feels like it needs to. I want this fleshed out. I want to see all of these events. Everything that has happened in this storyline, from the death of Darkseid to the Anti-Monitor Mobius becoming human again, to our heroes gaining godlike powers, all of these pieces coming together really has made this storyline feel very, very big. Plus, now you've got the crime syndicate, and it's like, who isn't involved in this tale? It feels like a universe-spanning event in this title. And it really has been contained to this title with the exception of the one-shots, and I applaud them for that, because I love big universe-spanning events that are outside, where you've got a mini-series that goes on, and every book kind of ties into it. I'm into that stuff. I'm not going to lie. But when you've got this going on in the main title, when you got what's going on in Batman going on, when you got what's going on in Superman, each of these books have their own things going on within them. This feels big. This feels epic. It's in multiple events are happening in the DC universe right now. Sometimes when I see people getting crabby about the current state of the DC universe, I'm like, are you not reading some of these books? What are you missing that I'm not, like, how can you be reading this and be crabby? I don't know. This is awesome. It just is plain out awesome. This is big. It's epic. It feels huge.
And just the buildup of some of this stuff, because you think with the Darkseid War, you would think that the death of Darkseid would be the ending of the Darkseid War. No, it's not. It's really just the beginning of it, and you get the power of Darkseid getting spread out. But then you still have Mobius still on the page. You still have, now the crime syndicate's getting back in. You've got, everything that's going on there, that this is such an epic story that it's funny to just say a dark side war because there is so much more to this story going on. And even within the heroes, I love those one shots where we see the heroes kind of getting taken over by this power. Some of them are able to pull back and control. Others still have their issues. And I love, with Barry being the death, with, Bruce, of course, being in the Mobius chair, everything that happened to Clark, you're like, oh my God, and it's still just growing because Cyborg's taken over by Grid. Our power ring is now once again full on evil, where the good just got pushed down to the bottom, and the evil ring has taken over. So you've got this. So much has been developing.
I think there's some interesting pages, though, that start to contradict what's going on with the ring that I really find that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think Power Ring's protesting too much.
Big time.
Yeah, and I actually really love that drama that's going on. There's so many little nuances that are going on in this title. In this issue alone, the opening page where you're sitting there taking a look at Kryptonite doesn't seem to bother him anymore, and he's like holding that in front of Ultraman, where you see Ultraman so feeble out of all this. That page, every so often there's a spread where you go, you had to do this. I mean, you had to do this spread. The spread in and of itself just kind of shows the nature of how things have changed. When you take a look at everybody who is different there. I love seeing Mr. Miracle and Big Barda together. I love seeing the changes that have gone on with our heroes and the ones that aren't changed reacting to what's going on here. It's an interesting sort of situation where there's a negotiations going on right now where both sides have a lot to gain from the alliance, but both sides have a lot to lose from an alliance here. So it's interesting to see. I'm like, well, I can see why they're not quite sure which way they want to go on this one and how much they really can afford to bargain for. I really adore the team up between these two because there's a reason why it benefits both and why they almost have to trust each other. And I like that I still wouldn't trust them.
Oh God, no. Oh God, it is. Every argument they have, is logical and makes sense why they would want to do this. But
Yes.
There's something on the side. There's some little side bit. They've got a secondary scam they're planning on double crossing you. They're going to pick the time to double cross, but the double cross is coming. And especially, I love how with Owlman being their primary negotiator, and just how that the look on the mask and everything is completely stoic. Him and Diana just going back and forth, and just those moments where the one panel where you see half of her face, see half of his face, just that basic concentration between the two of them. This was one of those where the art that is getting told along with the story is just as powerful as the story being told. And I was in I've been really truly enjoying the Dark Side War story arc just because of it's a multiple read through enjoyment, because you get your initial read through, you're like, yeah, this is cool. Then you go back through and you start seeing the little nuances. I love seeing Ultraman being ultra cowardly and just cowering behind, Owlman. Just take it from him. Just take it, kind of being a little Weasley sort of weakened guy. And again, he is the complete opposite of Superman. Even when Superman doesn't have his powers, he still stands tall. He still stands strong. He still is Superman. Ultraman, you take away his powers, you take away all his strength, you take away his being, and he just crumbles. And I love seeing those differences, both on the words, but also especially in just how he's drawn and just his mannerisms. It actually truly does come alive, and it's awesome.
And the mannerisms you're talking about are really prevalent in every single character. Batman, the way he's carrying himself on the Mobius chair. Flash, as he's sitting back there as the Black Racer. Every character is... I remember one of my favorite Justice League crossovers, and I've mentioned this many times, was back in the day with George Perez doing the artwork, where it was all the Earths with the new gods. It was where I first got to know characters like Mr. Miracle and stuff like that. And they went up against Darkseid. This feels that big for me. I feel like a kid again reading this particular story arc, just because it's taking me back to those days where I remember tracing the cover because of all the heroes on it, and like coloring it in and drawing on it. I mean, I was that young where it was like, oh, this is kind of fun. So I brought home tracing paper and I would trace, and I would draw the characters from, because there were so many characters on the covers of those events. It's great to see this many characters, but see them spotlighted so well. Like, nobody really gets ignored in this. And that's, I think, something that, and if there's somebody is kind of in the background in an issue, the next issue, they're going to have a big part. There's a great balance here in the story that I find fascinating in what they've done here.
One of us is going to die. Dude, why would you say that? Shazam, man. That just absolutely cracked me up. Again, this is still Billy. This is still that same, and every so often, I got to be reminded of that. And I got to be reminded that it is a kid inside that superhero in just that one little line, just that one little way of doing it. It was just a really cool just usage of it. And again, same thing with the Flash, how Barry is always that super positive guy. He's the host of the Black Racer. The essence of death is going to leak out on occasion. And I liked how this little glimpses of it. Later we see the death leak out and take control. There's just those really cool moments.
I would read a Shazam series in an instant.
Yeah.
Mainly because I'm enjoying Billy so much in this. If they use his Justice League appearance, the way that they've been using him in this book as a template for a series, I would read that in an instant. Because I just think that they've really done a great job with this character.
Yeah. Now, here's my question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they're going to give up Cyborg's body? Because they're talking about the deal is they'll return Cyborg as long as they provide a new body for Grid. One of Lex Luthor's armored suits should do. And I love just how they're throwing out, this is what we want, and it's very boom, 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 boom. But do you actually think they're going to give up Cyborg?
Not unless there's something in it for them. It all depends on how this ends.
Yeah.
If there's leverage still on both sides, maybe. If there's something that one team has that the other team wants and vice versa, as long as there is that balance there, yes. If not, there's no honor among thieves. They're there's no reason why would they? They're not going to do anything honorable.
No, and that's the thing. That's because you look at Owlman and just the strategery he's going to throw out throughout all of this, throughout his negotiations. He was always negotiating as if he was in a position of complete power. And I love that about him, that, they weren't completely in the strong spot, but he kept negotiating as if they were. He's like 100%, they are in charge here. They're letting the heroes think they quote unquote have an even deal, but it's not. They really are in control. And I love just how that's being played out. And even, again, the heroes are like, they're still keeping a strong position, but they're at one of those impasses where they got to make the deal.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of this whole thing. They have to make the deal. Both sides really have to make the deal. No matter how much they're posturing that they could go one way or the other, they can't. They need each other.
Yeah.
That's the nature of how big this is. So it's a relationship of convenience. They have to do this. Man, I'm glad they make the partnership. The big part for me is when you see the shadows coming over Gotham City and you flip the page and, man, seeing the Trinity in that light, how that worked out. I love Batman, the way he's kind of carrying himself. Like, hey, I'm just hanging out on my lounge chair here. I'm going to grab this guy along the way. It's kind of it's an interesting sort of Wonder Woman taking the lead there as your true hero. I'm going to say this. I love this costume. I know that, I think that the whole pant thing that they've been doing in the book has been cool. There's something when you see her with the armor, especially when you see the fact that this is more of her battle version of this, with the shield and everything there.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I really love the Amazon warrior garb when they do it right. There's something to that. I don't know. I think I'm kind of geeking out because of that slot in the film trailer where you see her standing there with the shield.
Yes.
That just totally made me geek out of classic kind of really well done Wonder Woman battle armor. I know it doesn't make functional sense at all, but it really does look, when you get sequences like this, she looks tough.
She looks tough. And here's the thing. I am a lot more understanding and, accepting of this, style of armor for Wonder Woman, this style of costume. I remember when we really first started, I wanted more of a fuller costume, fuller armor kind of thing for her. But to be honest, when you look at, the Gladiators and how their fighting style was, less physical armor, but more mobile and more, it's an agile strike and block. And it was a sword and shield style fighting. It was high maneuverability. It was the Jackie Chan fighting style. And for that, you didn't have a lot of armor. You didn't have a lot of heavy, bulky. And I think for Wonder Woman, that style of fighting fits her.
I agree.
So I am completely cool with her doing this. I like the pants. I think that looks good. I think the variations on her, she can get away for me. She can get away with wide variations of armor, of costume, especially given the circumstance. If there's certain times when she's like addressing, the United Nations, I would expect her more in a formal looking outfit, as opposed to if she's getting ready for a combat, she's getting ready to throw down. She's got to be mobile. She's got her bracers. She's got the shield. She's got the sword. She's got some armor plating, in the various strategic spots on her. Yes, but she's still got to be mobile and she's still got to be flexible. So I'm cool with them. And even if it's not a conscious effort, if it's just how the artist wants to draw her, I'm okay in my head because I've already justified it. But that sequence of the Trinity flying, you know what I absolutely loved, and it took me in my art read through to notice? The fact that the shield is strapped on her back.
Oh, yeah.
And you see the straps going over her shoulders. When that scene first came out, I never noticed the shield. I saw Soup, I saw her, I saw Batman, I saw him kind of like casually holding onto that guy. And I could have chuckled with you, but again, then when I look, you see the shields right there on her back, like, oh, that's cool. That's attention to detail by the art team to make sure, yes, we're going to have her with the shield, so she's got to have the on her.
Yeah. I always like Captain America when they've done that too. Kind of like the shield strapped on the back. It just makes sense from a functional sense to be able to carry it that way, because there's times where you need your hands free. And I've always liked that look, and I think it really works. I loved your Gladiator analogy because I think that's what works with me with that armor too. It really is about motion, and that part works. Shazam figuring out his powers. The fact that there's new gods now, so the letters all mean new things, and trying to figure out what this is starting over from scratch again. What are my powers? I've been bitten by a spider. What does that mean? He's going through that sense of discovery. Yeah, I love that part. I love the humor in it was great, but there was honesty to it. It wasn't slapstick. It was like, come on, man. Why don't I know what to do here? And thinking through each of the new gods that are attached to him. Then he goes, what's the Martian one again? Oh yeah, John's weakness. And he blows out the fire. I just really loved how that whole sequence played out, because he didn't look weak there. It was more of, I'm trying to figure this out. There's a sense of desperation here because I got to save these kids. Let me make this happen. And then it leads to the spot where we finally get to see Mobius, and Mobius versus Batman for the chair. And, oh man, it's just everything that I love.
Yeah, and it's weird because when you get those right, and I loved how they blasted it in, but they didn't stay with the fight. They kept jumping through the different characters.
Yep.
And I think that for me was a great balance of, as you're going along, like, oh, okay, oh, it gets that emotional roller coaster within the issue. And I think for me, that's one of the styles of, that, Jeff Johns writes. I'm like, yes, this is the cool stuff, because you're going bam, 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 hitting heavy actions, from one to another. And I loved how Mobius comes in, and then we go to Power Ring and Hal. And as you said, she does protest too much, because with her, he's willpower, she's fear. And I love the fact that fear is the green color for her. But she is a character. She is a Green Lantern. There is that willpower in her. And I hope that God she can fight through this and we can get her back. And I'd like to see that.
Wait, you know that we heard from her in that sequence. You know that, don't you? We heard from her in that sequence. You know that, don't you?
Which sequence?
That sequence there, she spoke too.
Yeah.
You know where, right?
Yeah, let me out. There's someone else in here with me.
Right. So the protesting too much, she's actually in there fighting something. There's a piece to this puzzle we don't know yet. She isn't done fighting. And I love the fact that we got to, like, that was one of my favorite sequences because I'm like, oh, wow, the Power Ring story is a lot more than we've ever realized that's going on there. I want to know what's going on inside that ring.
I'm wondering if we got the Parallax or something else in there with her.
Well, I wonder if it's on some level the original Power Ring or whatever.
Yeah, there's something going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very, very excited to see what's going on in that sequence. Man, that whole Green Lantern sequence was a beautiful 2-page spread.
Oh, God, yeah. Hey, he called for backup. Come on, you gotta love it, man.
I'll go along with that because of the fact that you use strategery as a way to show that it's an evil mindset. So I'm like, all right, I'll give you this.
I was waiting for the comments. I'm like, dang, I threw that out there. Come on.
I'll agree with you. It's an evil mindset.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And I tell you, I do like, when you look at just the vastness of the lanterns, but again, right after that, bodies start dropping, and the ring status, they lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there, and again, it shows, the mortality, it shows the risk, it shows a lot of what's going on there. And, it's kind of interesting that it is the lanterns, dying here, because they came in and they're the backup. Well, the cavalry comes in and they're going to die, and they're still going to have that. And it's kind of interesting how we went from that whole Green Lantern Corps story. Now we have this, and then it accentuates why we need a Corps, why we need more than just the one Green Lantern out there. And I think I like the seeing it. I like the usage of it. And again, I liked Hal Jordan with the Corps.
I agree with you. I think that use in this, too. I think sometimes when you get stories like this, you often ignore the fact that people have partners and teams that they work with. Why wouldn't you call them in if this is such a universe-spanning disaster? You know what I mean? So yeah. Seeing the Corps brought in that sequence, because remember, Hal's still Hal. And just like Diana is. So the two of them are really operating the way that they normally would in their solo titles. And I love the fact that they went to that. I thought that was really great. That leading to the two Amazons using their lassos and Mobius having to fight to his own extent what the lassos are each doing to him. The lasso trying to make him submit, the other one making him tell the truth, and him still being able to fight through them shows his power. Because he isn't the Anti-Monitor now, he's back to being the traditional god that Mobius is. And I really loved how that sequence played out in particular, seeing that battle continue. I like the expansion of the Anti-Monitor's story and the fact that we get to see him in a different light in this. That, to me, when you take the toolbox of this is this character that we associate with major crises in the universe, I can't wait to see what the end result of this story is and the end effect of this story is going to be moving forward.
Yeah, and again, it's just that the Superman Ultraman fight. You sit there and you feel bad for the guy, but on the other hand, you're like, kind of had that coming. And I loved how initially, Clark's like, hey, we work together, we take him down, and Ultraman, being Ultraman, is like, no, this creature's mine. And it just it didn't play out well for him.
Yeah, that is the part where it's interesting to see how sometimes you let your own emotions get the better of you. Your need for revenge. Revenge is a very deadly emotion. Because when you go to revenge too much, you lose a sense of reason that goes along with other emotions. And just seeing how, Mobius going, listen, this is what I miss being a god. Looking down from above, it's all so removed. It's all so isolated. Killing billions in a blink is so unsatisfying. But down here, with all of you, it's much more fun. That sequence was... And the Flash watching it, knowing that he can't stop it because of the fact that, he's the Black Racer in that moment. I just loved the way every bit of that sequence played out until Lex Luthor showed up. Now, is Ultraman in fact dead there? Oh, because he said, I can't, now, I guess looking down there, yes, that was satisfying. We don't see his body, do we anymore? Or what's going on
It
there?
looks to me like he completely absorbed the energy and, just basically sucked him dry. And that's it. I don't see anything left of Ultraman other than there's kind of like some energy remnants there, but it looks like he is completely dead. Because you think about the very beginning, Flash said, one of us is going to die.
Right.
And he's like, when Ultraman's calling to him for help me, he's like, I'm trying to, but I can't move. I can't stop death. So I'm thinking Ultraman is dead.
I would agree with that. I honestly totally agree with that assessment. So then we get the boom tube coming in, and it's Lex Luthor, and, basically in full-on Darkseid mode. And I can't wait for that battle.
Oh, yeah. Lex Luthor as Darkseid with an army of parademons, at his back. Yeah. And then assuming he takes out Mobius and assuming all ends well for them, Lex isn't going to turn over that power willingly. So you got a whole nother whatnot you're going to have to deal with, because not only do you have the rest of the the bad guys to deal with. Now you got Lex, and you got his army of parademons, and plus you got Superwoman giving birth to something. I don't know what what that kid's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be a good thing for us.
No, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I wonder if that baby's going to be the new Ultraman. It'll be interesting to see what our assumptions are on who the baby's father, how that plays out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I just always assumed that it wasn't Ultraman's kid.
It was
not. But you never know. Because they're talking about...
What if it's neither? What if it's neither of them?
Who do you think it could be?
The hooded...
Yeah, the Lex Luthor of that version, of that universe.
Right. So I don't know. We'll have to see. And what's going on with Steve Trevor? Grail's pulled aside Steve Trevor for what purpose?
Yeah, because, again, Trevor's cool and all, but he is just a regular human. What would they need him for? Unless they need another host of something?
I don't know.
And they need a human for the host or something? Yeah, because she's got the big glowing globe in her hand, and I have plans for you. What are the plans and what's going on here? I think that was kind of neat because Trevor was one of those where throughout the story, he's made points and he's made parts and he's been a part of the story, but he hasn't been the big shining piece of it. So now they're pulling him into this, and they're going to make him a major player in the event.
So you could argue this is now Forefront Warfare, where it was, Darkseid's army, Darkseid, versus the Anti-Monitor. And, technically the Anti-Monitor won there.
Yeah.
But you've also got the Justice League versus the Anti-Monitor. Now you've got the Crime Syndicate and the Justice League versus the Anti-Monitor. But they're also tentative allies, which means they will turn on each other at any point in time. The question is Grail. Is Grail operating with the Anti-Monitor still, or does she have her own agenda? Is there a fifth front to this whole thing?
See, initially I was thinking she was operating with the Anti-Monitor, but the big but there is you're never 100% certain.
Right.
That could be why she pulled Trevor out of the field. She now may have her own play that she's going to make against him. Because initially you're thinking, I was thinking this is going to be something to help out the Anti-Monitor. That this was the Anti-Monitor's backup plan, or this is the Anti-Monitor's wave 2 or 3, depending on what number in counting you're going with. But she could also have her own separate side play. And that's, I think, the neat thing when you got stories where you have so many different levels of villains out there, where you got villains and heroes teaming up against villains. So you've got all this people who could potentially double cross and betray each other that you don't know exactly where it's going to go through.
What if the baby's somehow Darkseid's?
Definitely could be as well. Think about it. It's there's any number of possibilities of who this kid could be, and that because they say a new god is about to be born. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe it is Darkseid's kid, and that's maybe where all the Darkseid power is going to go into that baby. And maybe that's their plan all along, that they want to have a Darkseid that they can control and manipulate. But when you put all that power into the one vessel, will you still be able to manipulate it? Will it still remain as a child, or will it immediately mature and grow up?
Who's they?
Exactly.
No. When you said they want to control it, who's they?
Okay, they in my head is Mobius and Grail.
Superwoman's baby?
Yes. Here's my thought process. They're thinking that they know that Superwoman, assuming Superwoman is giving birth to Darkseid, or assuming Superwoman's giving birth to something, they're thinking we can take all this energy and put it into one vessel.
Do they know that?
I don't know.
I don't think. See, I don't take them as being tied with Superwoman in any way. I think this is Superwoman's own secret. Whatever. Here's the thing: take Darkseid out of the equation, okay?
Right.
And the baby in general, I don't think anybody besides Superwoman knows what's going on with that baby.
Okay.
I don't think anyone does. I think maybe the hooded person, maybe. And that might be a stretch, because I admit we could be linking Superwoman's baby could be linked to a number of players, but I really think the only person who really 100% knows what's going on with that baby is Superwoman.
Is Superwoman, right?
And what her plans are is Superwoman. I don't think any of the crime syndicate has any clue. I think this is totally her play, whatever happens. So it's an interesting sort of conundrum with her.
So with that scenario, then I would say the thing that orb that Grail has, she's going to implant in Steve Trevor, and that is going to be used to suck the energies out of all the Darkseid energy. It's going to pull it into Steve Trevor.
Huh.
And then they will manipulate that circumstance. That's why they grab Trevor. That's why Trevor's involved, because they need the human host to kind of, I'm going to assume it's going to be kind of like an incubation period where his body is not going to be able to contain that energy. And once it's all absorbed into Trevor, their plan would be Trevor would explode. And then they would have the control of the energy.
It all comes
my thought. That's Mobius and Grail's plan. Now, it could be Grail's plan and she's double-crossing Mobius. Or it could be Mobius's plan to steal all that energy. There's variations on this. But that's what I'm assuming. The read-throughs, that's what I'm assuming Grail is doing. This is a plan to absorb all of the energy that's out there, all the Darkseid energy, and put it into a single host.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think all bets are off there. I do think there's a major play to happen there. I do think what's going on right now with Grail is independent of Superwoman. It's going to be a very interesting process that happens here.
Our next discussion will be on Superman number 49. The writer is Jean Lun Yang, with artist Jack Herbert, colorist Hi-Fi Blonde and Will Quintana, with letters by Steve Wands, cover by Howard Porter and Hi-Fi, the Neil Adams variant cover by Simon Bishley, and colored by Terry Dodson. Assistant editor is Andrew Marino, with group editor Eddie Berganza. Superman, of course, was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangements with the Jerry Siegel family.
I got a comment on the Neil Adams variant of this one, because it was a classic Batman cover that there was a takeoff of, but it was Superman in the pose. I'm really loving this Neil Adams variant month that they're doing, just because I'm a big fan of Neil Adams' artwork. And just seeing him kind of play around with some of the classics and having some fun with that has just been a pure geek out for me. Man, am I loving this story. We just got done talking about another epic going on in Justice League, and I feel this feels very, very epic. I love the way that it crisscrosses into Superman and Action Comics and Superman Wonder Woman. It just feels like a big event-driven storyline. Wonder Woman's role, the relationship between the two, I'm not convinced the relationship's over, and I hope I'm right on that one. I'm convinced too. There's a strong possibility I'm wrong on that one, but I don't think the final nail's been put in the coffin. Especially seeing the two of them interact in this storyline. I love the use of kryptonite-powered Superman and how that's working out. How he, imagine having that kind of power and that being something you've had since childhood. It would be like losing a part of yourself. Then all of a sudden you gain that back at the risk of your life. And you know that you have to take it back because of the events that are swirling around you. There would be I'd be so torn on the inside, because I'm pretty into self-preservation. And I love this part of this storyline because I'm like, I get what he's doing. I get why he loves what's happening to him. But he's a ticking time bomb with what he's doing right now. And he keeps doing it to himself. So it's such a cool storyline with what's going on here. A great use of Metallo, great use of Wonder Woman, great use of Lois Lane, and furthering Superman's relationship with her in this particular story arc. Clark sees her in a different light. A lot going on in this issue, and a really great character drama in the midst of awesome action with a villain. Vandal Savage in all media right now has become an MVP because I really love his use in and out of comics right now. What a tremendous character, and they're really nailing what I love about this character.
Oh, big time, big time, big time. It's funny, as you were going on your rant, I'm just nodding my head. Yes, 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 yes. Because one, the super couple can't be over, and I love just how when you see Diana, just kind of her desperation when she's trying to free him. It's like, Kal-El, you have to live. We're not done yet. And just that softness on her face, I was like, man, yes, they're not dead. But then later, when you see Clark and Lois, you're like, oh no, wait, hold on. And it was one of those periodically throughout the episode. I'm like, yes, I want both. I want both relationships because both have something to offer to the story, and it's each one actually makes sense. Each one is part of who he is. And it's going to be tough to say what the final story is going to be, who the final people are going to be, because both of them do care about him. Both of them, there's a reason for him to be with both of them. And it's, it's kind of the thing where I kept going back and forth, where I kept saying, no, I want the Lois and Clark. Wait, I really do like the super couple. Wait, I want that. And you see that going back and forth. And again, Lois Lane needs to be a strong, powerful character, and she is in this. And I loved Metallo, just how he is the super bodyguard. He is that personal guardian. It's not bodyguard, guardian. I love just that reference that he makes and how she asked me to help Superman, so here I am. And I thought that, again, this was great usage of these characters, but also just furthering this crazy love triangle that's going on and that's growing between them. Because at this point in time, you're seeing really Clark either come to terms with his feelings or start to notice his feelings, but he still has this thing going on with Diana, and it's what's going to happen there.
I might have blacked out. I'm not sure. Having 3 giant buildings land on top of you will do that. All I know is Diana makes me aware of myself. Some guys recognize their girlfriends or ex-girlfriends, and I think that's a key line. Footsteps. I recognize the rhythm of her punches. She weakened the dirt around me. Just need to gather my focus and... Crackoom! I loved that sequence because of the dialogue, because of the build, and just seeing him just whip out of it, and the hug between the two of them in that moment. Because there was a pretense with the two of them of comfort between them, where you see that there's still something there, even though, and you're right, there's a triangle there. Yeah. And I think the triangle is probably more prominent now than it has been.
Oh, definitely. And I think, one of that's the hug sequence, that you talk about. I absolutely love it. It was funny because she goes, oh, thank Hera, you're all right. Because once again, that is just that pure adulation, that she's got on her face. And this is something that, yes, this, you question whether the super couple was actually a couple or was it two very powerful people who should be together getting together. Here you're seeing that love. Here You're seeing that fear of the fear of loss that she has. I love that. I love that moment.
I do too. And that's the part that really gets me. This leading to the whole battle with Vandal Savage and his children and where this leads. With the Superman story, you want to have this sense of real danger to Superman, where he's overcoming insurmountable odds. A lot of times, one of the things that's kind of a criticism of Superman is just how powerful he is, and always having to go to kryptonite as the way to weaken him sometimes gets old. I love the reversal in this, where kryptonite is giving him strength, but it's killing him in a different way. And I really love the way that this storyline's playing out, in that you're seeing a superpowered Superman go up against a villain who has accounted for the fact that he's going up against Superman. The final fate of Hoarder? It's like, who saw that coming? I loved how that played out. Don't try to bully Vandal Savage, because he will not stand for dissension in the ranks. He will just replace you. And that's the disconnect of a guy who has lived for so long that personal attachments are no longer a thing for him. He has lived so long now that these really are lesser beings to him. Every one of them is expendable to his greater calling.
And he got Pesci'd. You know, you think about the scene from Goodfellas when Joe Pesci's character thought he was going to get made, and he walks into the room. Oh, no! Bam! He gets shot. I love just how that played out, where he's mid-sentence talking about, I demand you make me like you, father. Ah! You know, as he gets an axe to the back of the head. You know, that for me, again, a chuckling moment of a death of this guy. Now, here's the thing with Hoarder. Yes, he did put an axe on his head. Yes, he specially modified that axe so that it could take out both the organic and software varieties. So in a sense, Vandal Savage would have planned for a way to actually kill Hoarder. But did he really? Is there a chance that Hoarder may still be out there? Because Hoarder is one of those people who are very tough to kill.
Yeah. It would be very interesting to see Hoarder come back in a different
shell or a different format.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's funny because especially Puzzler. Any complaints from Hugh Puzzler? Not a one. He just saw the big guy with the axe take out Hoarder. I'm cool.
Yeah, Hoarder could actually evolve because of this now, which is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah. Now with the children of Vandal Savage coming through, the old lady who develops bat wings and claws and whatnot, that again, I did kind of chuckle with her. Just because, just imagining some sweet little lady with a walker all of a sudden, going all demon on you.
I don't take it that anybody who knew her would call her a sweet little old lady. They would probably call her a chronic complainer, just by the whole mannerisms. I told you I didn't need them pills. I guarantee you this is one that they go home from the nursing home and complain about constantly because of her mannerisms. Because she embraces that far too quickly for her to be this pleasant little person.
Yeah, and again, it's, you wonder how many of these are evil people who just got a super jacked up, or were they good people who just got, energized? Like the one kid who transformed into the giant axe wielder. He's like, whoa, this is what it must feel like for Mario after eating one of the mushrooms. Again, little kid inside this massive body, so he's going to have those kind of things. It was kind of like how the mannerisms of Shazam sometimes really remind you that it's a kid. That little sequence right there reminds you again, this is a kid in that body. I thought it kind of, again, it chuckles, kind of neat, kind of funny, interesting.
Metallo's heart powering up Kal-El and seeing him, we got these two coming right down from Central City, and Superman knocks him out almost immediately with one punch. I like the idea that he's almost super powered now because of the whole kryptonite thing going on with him. He's like supercharged more than usual. I love seeing that sequence, especially in light of how many are coming for them. It's always fun to see Superman against numbers. And I think that worked really well. I like that in Man of Steel. I like the idea that there were multiple Kryptonians that he had to deal with. I like that kind of thing. It's something going back to the original Superman movies. Superman 2 is still my favorite because of the battle with the three Kryptonians when he was doing that. I've always, since my childhood, I've always found that kind of as like my favorite definitive Superman, both versions, whether we're talking about the Donner cut or the Lester version. I really loved that movie because, who doesn't love Zod? But it's all of them together. And I really like when you see sequences where there's actual numbers that you can deal with now. This would be something I'd like to see animated. This is going to be a big month for film, by the way. Not to take a side, but it really is a DC aside. We got Batman versus Superman this month, but we also have that Justice League Teen Titans releases coming out digitally this month. I don't know how close that is to actually the Blu-ray release of that, but I know at the end of the month it's available digitally. And I can't wait to see that one because these animated releases have been outstanding. And I think it comes out digitally the same week as Batman Superman.
Oh, nice.
So this is a big month for DC
This
fans.
is going to be a big month for movies. Yeah.
But back to the whole battle and everything. When you start seeing the sequence, and all of a sudden, all of the friends start showing up, and you get these unusual characters coming into the fray that you don't normally expect because of the fact that a lot of the Justice Leaguers are tied up at the moment. And I really liked seeing some of the characters that we've seen throughout this run with Superman making an appearance in this again. Because these are characters that I've really loved in the storyline, and I was glad to see that Superman's the kind of guy that inspires people, that you want to help him. You want to be a part of what he's doing. And to see that is something that happens whether he's in his secret identity or not, it's just because of who the man is, I think is something that they're handling really well in this story.
Yeah, and I liked how when we got a lot of the his brawling buddies showing up for the fight as well.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
The ones from this storyline. I said the ones from this particular storyline, like Heimosu and all that type of thing. That's exactly what I mean. He has, in a short period of time, when probably he's at his lowest, inspired some of these people to kind of go, he's a good dude. I really believe in who this guy is, what he stands for, what he's trying to do. I'm going to have his back. That's what I mean by this character. And I think that's something that's the strength of Superman. I think when you show this, it separates him from other characters because of the fact that I think Superman's a guy, as a reader, you can't help but look up to and go, I want him to think I'm cool or I'm worthy on some level or something. And you want to follow behind him and help him.
Yeah, it's the gut check and the knuckle up where you want to be the guy who's got Superman's back.
Yeah, but he's not that. He's always this. I think the unique nature with him is there's other characters where I feel like Barry Allen. Barry Allen's a guy you feel like you can sit on a park bench with and chat. Superman's the guy you're always going to be like, man, I just talked to Superman. Like, it will never hit that buddy level. You'll always feel like I just helped Superman or I rallied behind Superman. But it's always going to be you're always going to feel like a tier lower than him because he's Superman. There's something to that. Whereas there's other heroes that you can feel yourself hanging with. Superman has a different aura about him.
Well, the Trinity has that. Yeah. Bat's the same way. Bat's the same way, and I'll argue Wonder Woman's the same way, where it's people will interact with them. Like, when Gotham, when it's an all call on Gotham, you're working, for Batman. You're not working with Batman. You're part of Team Batman. Same thing with Superman. When Superman needs the rally and you're coming to aid of Superman, you're not fighting alongside Superman, you're helping him. It's, part of that level of, I want to be the guy who can be, who will be there when Superman needs me, or when Batman needs me, or when Wonder Woman needs me. Those are, but it's the tier of the Trinity level.
Wait, that Jackwad was chosen? What a great sequence, because he took out Metallo. And Metallo having that moment where he's like, you know what? Yeah, my heart's always been for Lois alone, but Superman, your heart is for everyone, and kind of giving in that moment and helping. Now, I don't know how they're going to bring Metallo back, but they certainly need to do that. It's going to happen at some point because they always find a way to bring that character back. It's going to be interesting to see what they do to bring Metallo back. But Superman wrapping that around his neck and going, you know what? He gave his heart. I'm not giving any less. Where this is going to go for Superman, because we're getting there. I mean, we're heading to issue 50. So I think this storyline is coming to an end this coming month. I think. Whether it is or it's not, I can't, because issue 50, you would imagine they're going to have some big things happening. One of these issue 50s is probably going to be the one, I think. Regardless, this is a storyline very similar to what's going on right now with the Justice League, where I love the pacing. I think everything that they've done has done a great job of showing. And Batman Superman's another book that it's not a direct part of this storyline, but it's reflecting what's been going on with both the Superman and the Batman universes. I think all of these books tying together have really given me a global sense of what this change for Superman has meant for him and those that interact with him. And I really love that. I love what's happened with the Daily Planet crew with regards to this. Wonder Woman and his relationship there. Batman. Everything in this storyline. I am gripping to this one. I can't wait to. I have been just as excited to read Superman as I have any other title that I've been reading right now. I mean, it's really hard each week for me to decide what I want to read first.
And the cool thing with the difference with the two different Superman titles, you're still getting that same epic level of story being told.
Yep.
You know, whether it's, you know, the Vandal Savage story, whether it's, you know, everything going on in action, it's, you know, you're still getting that epic level. And I keep asking myself, how are they going to, one, fix him? Two, what are they going to do with his secret identity? What's going to happen with Lois? What's going to happen with Diana? There's so many stuff that is going on within these big epic adventure and fights that you're like, there's more to just Superman than just being Superman now. There's more to just Batman than just being Batman. There's all the side stories that are going on. And I think that for me has been my really deep excitement for the Superman universe, is because of all these other stories that, you know, I'm assuming by issue 52 everything's going to be wrapped up, but I still don't know how they're going to do it because everybody knows this truth. Now, fixing him physically, yeah, they're showing signs of how they can do it with the kryptonite, and maybe Vandal's going to have something that can do it. Maybe Kryptonian technology will be able to do something. I don't think it's
going to be 52. I'm going to correct you there.
You don't think it's going to be 52?
I think it's going to be Rebirth. I think that's all going to be taken care of in Superman Rebirth.
Superman Rebirth, you think that's well,
or the Rebirth special, Remember, there's a Jeff Johns Rebirth special first.
Yeah.
Then there will be Superman Rebirth or Action Rebirth, you know, right. however they're doing those titles. So I think between those titles, that's where we're going to see the resolution of that. I think what we're going to be seeing, and I could be wrong, this is my speculation. I think, so keep that in mind. I think what's going to happen in issue 50 of these books, we're going to see the wrap up of this storyline. Then we're going to see epilogue leading up to issue 52. And when I say epilogue, it doesn't mean I don't mean that poo-pooing it. A lot's happened here. So, I mean, there's going to be after effects of this that we're going to want to read about before we get to Rebirth. So pacing-wise, the 2 months afterwards are really going to be kind of a necessary conclusion to this particular arc, whatever that needs to look like. And I think those pieces are going to be cleared up in I think those issues are going to lead into the clearing up that's going to happen in Rebirth. And I might be wrong, but
I know.
That's kind of my speculation.
You know, and I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. Honestly, I'm just enjoying the ride. I think it's a really good ride right now. These books are primed to wrap up their story arcs, which I love, because I love that we're not getting dropped out of big epic stories that we've been reading. And it will be put in a place where they can do this Rebirth. I hope this Rebirth leads to let's put the toolbox back into play. You know, everything that we need to toolbox-wise, put it back into play and just keep going forward. I think people are getting... I think what I'm seeing more on the internet right now is not eventitis. It's rebootingitis. I think enough, you know, kind of let's have some forward movement and direction. And I don't know, I mean, to me... I think everything that they've done so far, and I'm going to take DC out of this and take a look at Marvel as well and what they're doing and saying, I think what these companies are doing well is when they do these kind of refreshes, and I do say that more than reboots, they're story driven. So it's connected to everything you've read previously. So, yes, there's a change for the character, but they're not ignoring what happened in the past. An event happened that caused this change. So that immediately connects it. So we haven't lost any continuity. That's the part that really is, I think, where I see things maybe a little different than some people. I feel we've lost zero continuity because Flashpoint happened, And it was connected to the previous universe. So there's that immediate bridge there. So every story you read before happened. There's now this that happened along with it. So the toolboxes are all there. This rebirth is going to continue that process. And I think put back into place some of the things that I've been missing. I want a Justice Society back in the worst way.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's certain elements in Superman's world that I would love to see put back into play. And I want it to be story driven. So don't just, bam, do it. Rebirth, I think, is what Johns did so well with those two Rebirth titles is that everything was story driven and there was a greater clarification of who these characters were. If these Rebirth titles succeed in doing that and putting puzzle pieces back in that we've all been missing, while at the same time not ignoring everything that's happened, this could be a home run event. I really have high hopes for this. I want this to be good. I see the crabbiness out there. I'm like, why do you want this to fail so badly? Yeah. I don't get it. Like, I'm excited for the positive possibilities of it. I'm excited for the good reading that comes out of this. I hope in the end, this brings people into comic shops. It gets people to try books again, maybe that they abandoned. Let me give a character a shot that I haven't read in a while. I hope as they do the announcements of creative teams and whatever they can announce beforehand, that it leads to some positive momentum. The only thing I'm curious about is the timing. I can't believe they didn't do this as an April thing. Because wouldn't you with the movies coming?
True.
People,
yeah.
You walk out and here's a comic. Go read this. Like that Jeff Johns Rebirth one shot should be handed to people as they walk out of the movie. And I get the whole, you got to tie it into Free Comic Book Day and all that. I'd be like, let's do something else for Free Comic Book Day. I think connecting the movie and moving people into shops for a DC April event is going to be much more beneficial to comic shops than even the Free Comic Book Day thing.
Right. Well, because you think about it, if you get somebody who walks out of the movie and they're going into the shops and it's going to be Batman 49 or Superman 49 or issue 50 will be on the shelves, maybe when they see the movie.
But Rebirth 1 is on the shelf instead.
Right.
It's a very different ball game there.
It'd be a much better let me Rebirth Superman. Now, let me try that. Maybe it'll be, maybe you'll get them thinking maybe it's associated with the movies. Maybe it's something like that. And
now, Free Comic Book Day, the one advantage they're going to have is you're still going to be riding high off the movie. So, because it's only 1 month later. So, got to be fair there. It's only a month later, and that goes. It's just then you're going to get that Rebirth issue. You got to get into as many hands as possible. Because that's going to be good for comic shops. It can't be just people walking into comic book shops for Free Comic Book Day. They got to find a way to distribute that book and get into. See, that's the one issue that I honestly think people should walk out of the movie with.
Yeah.
I think that would be an interesting promotion. Here's your free book. This is this Rebirth thing. We're doing this in June. You're going to want to be a part of this. It's big. Yeah. And I don't know. I think that to me, that's really what they should be doing with as far as tying that into the movie, because I think that's a way to get the crowd. It's a jump on point, and you can hand it to them as they walk out of the film. I mean, I don't get that. That part, you're going to give it away free at comic shops anyway. Do that, and you're actually doing the comic retailers, I think, a service, because there's going to be some people who maybe would never walk into a comic shop before that. If they just read that baby, may walk in. And I don't know. I think that part's baffling me about this. But I also don't know what they're going to do, like what kind of things we're going to see in the movie, what kind of promotion there's going to be tying into that afterwards. I can't imagine there isn't going to be some kind of advertising of some sort. I don't know. I'm excited for this month. I see the potential of what's going to come out this month with the film. Whether you liked Man of Steel or not, or even are interested in this movie or not, the buzz it's going to generate is going to be a positive. And for these particular brands of characters. And I'm a Marvel fan. I love what's going on with Marvel. I love the excitement around Marvel. I want DC to have that same excitement. I want comics to have that same kind of excitement. So I'm excited for this film doing that. I'm excited for Suicide Squad doing that. This could wind up being a really tremendous summer for DC fans. On that note, speaking of tremendous, you want to talk Batman 49?
Oh, God, yeah.
Our final discussion this episode is going to be Batman 49. Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV are writers. Yannick Paquette as the artist. Nathan Fairbairn on colors. Steve Wands on letters. Paquette and Fairbairn on the cover. Apologies for name butchery there because I know it happened. Neil Adams on the variant cover, inked by Walter Simonson, colored by Laura Martin. Rebecca Taylor is the associate editor. Mark Doyle is the editor. Batman, of course, created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And apologies again for any name butchery because I could not be happier. It's always great to see it like a Neil Adams variant cover, but the amazing art team who's doing the interiors on this book were absolutely doing a home run. This was the issue. This is the one. How does it happen? How does it get back? And I was geeking out the entire issue on this one because it was what I expected, but then not what I expected. And I love when I'm surprised. You know what I mean? I don't know if this is a surprise for you. It was the process that wound up being such a surprise for me on this one. And yet such a satisfying process that we went through on.
Yeah.
The heroism that's inherent in Bruce Wayne, memory, no memory, whatever, is something I think that really struck me on this.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, it's, when he started remembering and when he started realizing he is the Batman, you start seeing those moments. And I remember every time we would have a conversation about Batman, like, see, he remembers, see, and you'd see that Batman come out in Bruce Wayne. But there still was that Bruce who was, who didn't go through the horrific things that made Batman. There was still that sweet, innocent kid who didn't have that, who didn't have the post-traumatic stress disorder that made him become Batman. And the whole time, because I'm sitting here thinking, as these issues have been playing out, like the one thing that always ran through my mind was muscle memory, and they even addressed it in the comic when Alfred had that conversation with Clark about how he's not the same guy. He can't do what he did before. He's a completely different person. And I love just how they had that. I was thinking in my head, okay, they're going to have to have a multi-month training session. They're going to have to, no, they really did fix it here. And they fixed it in a way that I don't feel like this was just a slate clean wiping. This wasn't boom, a magic eraser, fix everything fix. This was a Batman fix. And I really did enjoy that.
The interesting part is the way this issue opens with this Bruce. I know. Bruce, I know. It's over, Bruce. You'll never be Batman again. But yet that wasn't the whole story because he was going through this process and the memories were there. And he was seeing bits and pieces of the memory in the way that they were falling back into place in a way that didn't chronologically fit. Like he started to become more aware of the Court of Owls and their role in Gotham and how they were puppet masters pulling the strings. He saw at the Wayne Tower what was going on there. This stuff was all going on in his head. I'm taking this was going on in his head as he was confronting Alfred, realizing that he's Batman. I don't know that the whole story there is that he didn't know. Like, memory was happening there in that head of his, that crazy head of his, on what was going on with the fact that he recovered and was alive. Yes, there was the disconnect, but that wasn't the whole story. Because I think the guy that went down into the cave, for as much of the fact that he needed to be shocked and to the point where he needed to die almost to come back as Batman again, I do think that guy has elements of Batman in him.
Oh, yeah. That person, this Bruce Wayne who shows up, who's got the beard and he's kind of like disheveled, said, I got to go down there, Alfred. That guy does kind of know who he was. He doesn't have the full knowledge. And when they do this other artwork where they're showing him with the Court of Owls, I took it that was all going on when they were doing the brain whammy to him. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of stuff his brain was kind of fabrications and twists of reality that were going on in his head while they're trying to do that whole rebooting process. And it was creating these fantasy universes or these other variations and whatnot. That's how I kind of took it. This was sort of either his brain, combating this information coming in, because naturally it's the whole with when you have a traumatic experience, you block it out or you do different stuff. Like, this is kind of the brain fighting that rebooting process. Whereas when we see him with Alfred all disheveled and we see the one-handed Alfred, that's the real world getting ready to go down into the cave.
Yeah. That's the part that, I don't know, I think is just the demeanor, the way he's carrying himself, what Alfred's going through. This bit where there are others. Someone else can do it. Just please, just don't say it. Alfred, I'm Batman. That moment where Alfred's almost crushed, he's like, you finally were able to walk away from this. I watched how you drove yourself. I watched what this did to you. Alfred's been there through all of it. And what really is powerful in this moment is how much that has weighed on Alfred. What that meant for him. I mean, to the point where, Alfred was like content to let this all go to rest. He was content to not have his hand put back on. I mean, all this, the stuff that Alfred was willing to do to let others just kind of take over and let Bruce move on with his life. To the point where he's been helping out with the kids in We Are Robin, just kind of like, you know what? Gotham can have other protectors now. These people can move on. I will help facilitate them, and Bruce can go on and live his life and be happy. I'm content with all that. The reality comes crashing down. And in the end, it's you kind of talk about in Highlander, there can be only one. I think in the end here, there can be only one.
Yeah. The one scene I absolutely loved, and it's just heartbreaking for me, where he's sitting there, no, you're not him. He's dead. He's finally dead. Died fighting that monster like he wanted. I love just that realization in Alfred where he's like, no, Bruce always, that Bruce that was before, that's how he wanted to die. Let him stay dead. The city gave you back, You're my boy and you can't go back. You can't. Those moments really just tore me up with Alfred because this isn't just about, this is about Bruce Wayne had that moment of happiness, had that chance of life, and Alfred was fighting for that. And I thought those were some of just those great moments.
The memorial waterfall and that whole piece in there, you're seeing in his mind different fabrications of elements of two worlds crashing together. It's a very, very bright world in some cases, and it gets gradually darker as he goes down. Gotham is falling apart, Alfred. Right now, this second, Bloom is holding the city hostage. The police are about to move in. Any moment now, the whole thing will fall apart. I need to see if there's a way. And, this whole destroyed machine thing and him just understanding. You keep saying that, but if Batman was what everyone says he was, he would have had a backup. There would have been a way to activate. Voice command recognized. Activating full cave systems now. Welcome back, Batman. I mean, right away, everything just kind of kicking in, and Alfred's just trying at every single step to discourage this. And Bruce just kind of like, are there any other servers compatible with the machine? One result found. Shall I activate the Alfred protocol? This whole justification, it's a full backup of the memory drives. Look, the last update was just before the final attack with the Joker. His last moment in the cave. Why would he name it? You're the one who would always patch him up and make him new when he fell. Who else would he entrust the whole of Batman to? Maybe the Alfred standing in front of me wouldn't do it, but I think there are two ghosts down in this cave. The man I was and the one person he trusted more than anyone to father each generation of Batman. That final battle between the two of them when they're sitting there just realizing, listen, we have become these two different people. That's true. But you need to understand this is what Batman is. It's not just Bruce. It's Alfred too. It's this whole building between the two of them. And this crashing down, the reality on the two of them. This is a man who has been the closest confidant to Batman, but he's also the father of this young man. He's the foster father, the father figure, whatever you want to call it. When those parents died, he became the father figure. He is Bruce's father. The part where he's got to face is, am I the trusted confidant of Batman or am I the father? Those roles are not always meshing. And you're seeing it here where he's like, I can't do this to you again. I can't. Here's the thing. I supported you when you were in this place and there was no other choice because this was your chosen path. You were driven to this. There is another opportunity now, another door that is better for you. How can I condemn you to this? How can I put you back in this spot? I love the drama of this because it's so real, so human between these two. This is I did not see this playing out the way that it did, and yet it felt more right than anything I would have ever seen playing out in this.
Oh God, yeah. And it's funny because that one sequence that you're talking about, I love just, again, the gut-wrenchingness in Alfred, but I love that moment of the realization. Could I live with myself knowing that I know now? Just walk away without having tried. And Alfred has to, and I loved how they took 2 panels to sit there, and Alfred's like, no. And again, Alfred knows Bruce could not walk away from this. He has to try. He has to give it that shot. And even this Bruce Wayne, who doesn't know everything that the previous Bruce Wayne knew, this Bruce Wayne who isn't Batman, who has the fabrics and the twinges in his mind of who he was, but for all purposes really is a completely different person. He knows, I have to do this. If I didn't try, it would be even worse on me. And I thought that, for me, again, gut-wrenching moments in realization of Alfred when he knows, I have to do this. And it's that combination of father figure to also guardian to assistant to that support element. He is the support element of Batman, but he is Bruce Wayne's father in all sense. He is, for all practical purposes, he looks at him as a son, not as a boss, not as a partner, but looks at him as a son. And that right there, that's the gut-wrenching things that are killing Alfred. And it kills Alfred every single time Bruce goes out, every time he comes back and he's got to stitch them together. Every single time he's sitting there supporting him, but he's dying on the inside. I think that, for me, this was a great way to show just how much this really cuts into Alfred.
I loved, again, as each shock came, we saw a different variation, a closer variation to actual Batman, where Bruce was meshing the 2 lives. The future that he saw with her, along with who he was as Batman. He can see the 2 elements connecting, but then it comes crashing around because he didn't quite connect to it. This shock kept coming over and over and over again as the 2 worlds were crashing together and not really working. He kept crashing into it. Every time you saw it, you saw closer and closer, darker elements. Because I loved when you saw him in, like, the desert, traveling along there. It's more like Ra's al Ghul. You see Robin there. There's more reminiscent to some of those years in his life. Again, meshing into this person that he's become. I loved seeing how every shock kept going faster and faster. But then he kept saying, listen, I am not going to murder you. I am not going to let you die. The more we shock you, what'll happen is, you want me to keep turning it up. You want me to have it kill you. I will not kill you. I will not do that to you. I can't do that to you. When she shows up, when Julie shows up and says, I can do this. I've always known. I've in many ways, maybe she's been denying it to herself, but I've always known he was Batman. He is the one. Her connection to Joe Chill and the way that they've reworked the story on that end, I think has been tremendous in this. And in her moment going, listen, this is full circle. This is my chance to make things right, to do this. And I know what it means. And there's no choice here. I know what I'm giving up because of this. And her doing that in this moment, this is how you do epic storytelling. You build a storyline with Bruce and Julie that we start to care about. We want to see Bruce have that happiness. And yet in this moment, the heartbreaking reality of who Batman is and what his mission is all about comes crashing down yet again. And it makes it to the point where, are we going to let this city fall? Are we going to let Bloom win? Or are we going to let the one man who can stop him come back and do it? And they make that fateful decision to do that. I've never seen such a roller coaster. I was on a trip when I did this. I was in Columbus. We were at a tech conference. And they had to call our school for a snow day. It was like 4 a.m. So I was up at that morning with the superintendent, kind of talking about the snow day. And he said, I'm going to call you back. Well, he said, it's probably going to be about, 15, 20 minutes for me to call you back. I had already been downloading this in the morning because, you know, the Comixology releases are a little sooner. I was downloading this to read it. I had a paper copy coming. I needed to read this then. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is out. So I started reading this. He called me back. I'm like sitting here like, darn it. I want to
finish reading.
Because I handle the tech side of our snow days, right? So I went and did that, and I'm like, I rushed back and read it. Then I'm like, but now I need to read it again because I need to read it without interruptions. So I ended up staying up that morning, and I went to like an 8 a.m. keynote because I had, you know, read Batman a couple of times because of it. But this was like one of those issues where I read it and then I immediately read it again to just experience every moment of amazing drama in this. This is amazing writing. I mean, what they did with these characters and her like tragic going, goodbye, Bruce. I love you, Jules. I always will. Here's the thing. Do you think that man is gone that she had been with for all those months, or is he still in there?
I think he's still in there. As much as the old Bruce was in the new Bruce, as much as Batman was in that other Bruce Wayne that we saw, that guy is still in this Bruce Wayne. There's still that piece of him. Now, I don't see him being able to have a life with Julie. I don't see him, you know, being able to have that, you know, that connection they had, or even that, or feel that love. He's going to be back to being Batman. And there's a thing about one of the big tragedies on Batman is he always has the mission. He always has that always takes precedence over his personal love, his personal life, you know, there's always the mission. So, but that person is still in there. And part of me wonders if we're going to see glimmers of that person, like we saw glimmers of Batman when we had the kinder, gentler Bruce Wayne. We had those glimmers and those moments when Batman would fire up and we'd say, yeah, there he is. I'm wondering if we're going to have those glimmers of kind Bruce, of nice Bruce, when Batman's, you know, going forward in the story. And I think that, for me, is something that's going to make the character that much cooler, in that when we have these moments, when we have these little sparks of, you know, of I don't even know what you call. You can't call him old Bruce, nice Bruce. You know, you're going to have those sparks that are going to fire, and I'm thinking that's one of the things I'm looking forward to in the future stories coming down the line.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where this goes. I really, it's such an engaging storyline. I don't know that it's a foregone. I kind of don't want it to be a foregone conclusion that relationship's over. I don't know what they're going to do. They've really crafted a story here that made me care about both versions of Bruce Wayne. And I don't know, my favorite bit was that, Master Bruce, is that you? If so, listen to me. You've been away a long time, but the city, it's under the threat of stop. Save it for the car. Let's go to work. I'm like, what do you mean that's the last page? What? No. There needs to be more here. No. I mean, why isn't this like, this is when I wanted this book bi-monthly.
Yes, yes, I want this bi-monthly now because I want to see more of this story. But here's the thing I thought was kind of neat.
Okay,
you know, and I noticed this in my art read through, how when he first straps into the machine, Bruce has a full beard and mustache, and then you see every time he gets zapped, you're seeing less and less and less of the beard. You know, whether it's getting blasted off of him or whether this machine is kind of reworking who he is, you know, so we're getting back to whether it's not just a mental thing, whether it's actually physical reconstruction of him or anything. But by the end there, that beard is gone, and it's back to the kind of like the 5 o'clock shadowish type of you know look. And there's the look to Bruce isn't just about, you know, Batman's back. There is that intensity back. There is that, and I kind of it was funny, I even heard the Bat voice as he's like, save it for the car. Let's go to work. And you kind of heard that immediately, and just how everything was laid out. It was like absolutely it was a really cool thing.
Yeah. It's,
and for me, it also kind of, by him going through a physical transformation, it's going to kind of, for me, in my head, the whole, can this guy jump right back into being Batman? This isn't just a simple memory return. This is a physical transformation to the point he was right before his last battle with the Joker, right before all that went out. This guy is going back to that moment in time. So we're going to have that same physical Bruce, where this Batman should be able to throw down at the same level that he was before.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. There's so many, it's funny. It's funny how an issue can answer so much and lead to so many more interesting questions. This book has certainly done that. This is an example of marquee comics. I mean, this is a run I will read for years to come because of the development of it. It's so depth-filled and so interesting and captures everything that I love about Batman. Honestly, this month is like such a Batman month. Coming up, we're going to get the next issue of this. We're going to get the movie. There's going to be a Justice League versus Teen Titans DVD. Great, stories going on still with the Jim Gordon thread. There's so much stuff going on right now that's phenomenal. Did you watch Gotham? Did you get the new episode?
Oh yeah,
of Gotham?
I'm caught up.
I mean, can we talk a little bit about Gotham, seeing as we're kind of at this point? Because it's really one of the shows we have not talked about. Maybe we'll fish in iZombie and the next couple episodes, because that's the only other program we did. It was funny watching the Mr. Freeze episode of Gotham, and just how much I loved the development of that. Seeing a young Mr. Freeze, Victor or was it Fries?
Fries.
Yes.
Fries.
And I liked how Harvey was the one saying, "I'm good at these names things."
Yeah.
But the great thing about that show is it moves at a very fast pace, because we had a whole arc at the beginning of this season that really at the mid-season finale came to a close and has led to a completely separate second arc for this season that's kicking off right now with the aftermath of, Oswald and Jim killed him and really put an end to his reign of terror. It's left a power vacuum of a sort in the crime families that seem to be filled by his sister and the guy who was Oswald's right-hand man and Fish's right-hand man, who's ready to take over. So we're seeing another power play going on in this city that Selina was witnessing. Oswald and Edward Nygma's relationship, the secret for Jim Gordon. Do you think that secret of Jim Gordon's is going to come to light?
I don't see how it can't. Because to me, I think that's going to be the end of the Gordon-Leslie Tompkins relationship. It's going to come out, and she's going to realize what he did, and that's going to be the end of their relationship. Because you think back to Barbara kept throwing out to Leslie, he's lying to you. He's lying to you. He's lying. She kept throwing it in her crazy voice and just her crazy way of doing it, and she's dismissing it, but she keeps going. You okay? Everything good? Oh yeah, everything good. She knows in the back of her head he's not completely telling the truth. So when he does have that final confession to her that yes, he was holding back and yes, he killed him, that is going to be the end of that relationship. And I don't know how everything is going to play out with Leslie, currently being pregnant, and is that going to be James Jr.? Is that going to be Barbara? Who is going to be that kid, or is Barbara going to? There's a lot of story left to be told in the Gordon, in the Gordon family, life, but I definitely think that secret is going to come out. Now, will the commissioner find out? I don't know, but I definitely know Leslie's going to figure it out or find out, or Jim's going to confess to her. There's so many different levels of the story being told, because you do have that whole Oswald Cobblepot and Nygma mystery going on. So, Cobblepot's going to eventually get out of Arkham. He's going to come back because he's the Penguin. Whether the Riddler helps him or not, I don't know. But the Riddler is the Riddler now. Edward, is no longer the nice guy. He is the Riddler now. He's just not calling himself that yet, but there's still that character is there. And I think that is, again, one of those characters that really slowly grew and is actually a really cool character right now that I want to see him, see what happens with him further going down the line of him leaving the GCPD, him doing his own thing and, actually truly becoming the Riddler. There's so much they can tell on the Gotham story that I'm as excited as I've been. I'm still now going, yes, yes, yes.
This show just keeps getting better and better and better as it goes on, because I think they cover ground that you never expected them to cover, and they do it so well. I adore that show for everything that it's unapologetic in the way that it tries to capture all of the elements of Gotham at an early stage. I don't mind some of the things that they take liberties with. I don't mind what they did with Sarah Essen. The fact that, Sarah and Jim in the comics had a relationship, and this was, years ago, and he wound up going off with Sarah and having a whole relationship with her. I don't mind that they took some liberties with that and made Sarah's boss and, just kind of a wink and a nod to that past history. The Leslie Tompkins thing, I honestly have zero issue if he stays with Leslie and doesn't wind up with Barbara. And the baby is, in fact, James Jr. that Leslie has. I have zero issue. I don't know if you do. Would it bother you if she had the kid and it is James Jr.?
I don't think it would bother me, just because this is a different universe. But in my head, I'm still thinking that Jim and Barbara are going to get together.
How?
Their kid. How?
Yes. I'm not, here's the thing. I'm not disputing you saying that, because there is a part of me that thinks the same thing too. But every time I say that, I literally say that to myself in that same tone of voice. Like, how? How do you go back? Like, how do you go back to that after everything?
Because Gordon is, some would say a sucker. Others would say very forgiving. Barbara there's a weakness. Every person has that character weakness or something. With Gordon, his weakness is Barbara. And I think if she went through a program, or if she went through something and started showing signs of the old Barbara coming back, Gordon would take her back and say, you know what, she's back. She was sick before, she's actually making and actually, he would accept her and bring her back into the fold, and actually that could fix, stuff, especially if, because part of me wants Jim and Barbara to be back together again, because I want, James Jr. to be crazy like the mother, and then Barbara to be like the father, and that's how I want. I do want that relationship to be where they have the two kids. The one is like the mom, the other's like the dad, and you see where she's the one eventually becomes Batgirl, the other one ends up becoming a supervillain. It's those are the kind of stuff that I want to play out in the story. But sure. Again, as I'm saying that, if they went the other route and they kept Leslie, and Jim together and having them have the kid. Now, if Leslie and Jim Gordon ever have a daughter, I can't see Leslie being okay. Yeah, name her after Barbara. That's okay. I can't see Leslie accepting that. So, Barbara's got to be back in the picture.
In other realities, though, Barbara was not Jim's daughter. Barbara was the niece.
Oh, okay.
So
I've never read a reality where Barbara wasn't the daughter.
Barbara was the niece in other realities. So
okay.
That's been retconned. That's been played off and retconned before. So we're to the point where she lived with him so long, she was almost like an adopted daughter and all that kind of thing you can play out. So I don't know. It becomes very interesting how that story could transpire. I don't know on that one. I'm very open-minded. I think here's the thing. I'm invested in the Jim and Leslie relationship. But I love the actress who's playing Barbara. She's a certain brand of crazy. I love that there's a point to what you're saying in the sense that you see that Jim has this kind of bittersweet need to save Barbara. That's kind of there and running through it, which is, I know where you're going with this, and I don't have an argument for that. I see that as a thing too. It's just, that's a hard thing to come back from.
Oh, hey, it is a tough one. I personally couldn't. Well, I'm saying I couldn't, but actually I could. I've got my weaknesses, and I think I think I could see me doing something stupid like taking back Barbara, saying, "Well, she's okay now. Look, she's a lot better," and I just ignore the other craziness going on, just because I've got that weakness as well. And I think that's part of the reason why I think they could make it work and they could bring the character back in and have those two together, because I could see myself doing something stupid like that. And believe me, taking back Barbara Keene would be stupid.
Right. Wow.
Here's something that's interesting for me in the show.
Okay.
When they first, throw out that Mr. Freeze is going to be coming into play, my first reaction was negative.
Why?
Well, because the whole, I didn't want them introducing too many of the Bat villains now, because I wanted them closer to Bruce's age. Like Harvey Dent, I still have issues with Harvey Dent being so much older than Bruce. I always wanted that character to be Bruce's age and actually be one of Bruce's classmates at school, and how they showed Tommy in a quick snip. I think they should have had Harvey be one of those other kids right there and have him actually say, "Oh, see you, Harvey, see you, Bruce," and have that kind of moment, and not actually bring in Harvey Dent, who will become Two-Face later on. I was thinking the same thing with
the show loses a lot of steam though if it quickly becomes Gotham Kids. Right. Dun, 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 dun.
Like, for example, with Scarecrow.
Right.
They did a great job with that, where it's his father.
Right.
It's not, Scarecrow. The Scarecrow, Jonathan Crane, is still a kid whose brain is fried because of his father's experiments. So in Gotham, they showed the father messing with the kid, that person will eventually become Scarecrow. That's a good deal with that. Now, with Mr. Freeze, when they first brought it in, I was a little bit leery until they told the story. I gotta tell you, man.
Yeah.
I really like that story, and I like the explanation. And when Freeze eventually is going to take a dive bath in some freezing solution, whatnot, and going to become Mr. Freeze, who has to live inside a suit. Once he does that transformation, age gets thrown out the window. Because if you think about it, if he's on that permanent, situation where he's able to survive, time gets kind of thrown out for him. And I think that's going to be kind of a neat story explaining, because I love the couple. I think it was Harvey, or maybe it was even Bruce, or Gordon. One of them was saying how things are changing in Gotham. Things are getting weirder here. And they're just acknowledging this transformation, this slow turning from a corrupt city to a corrupt city that's really crazy here. There's a high level of wacko going on in Gotham City now. And I liked how they're starting to recognize that evolution and that change. Yeah. It's really going to bring forth the birth and the need for the Batman.
I think, I think that, especially when you saw like the kind of the preview at the beginning, not the preview, but the recap at the beginning, where it was kind of going over how Gotham has changed. You got to see everything that had happened. I gotta tell you, I think what would happen is if you make every one of these having a previous generation before them, like, I agree with everything you said about the Scarecrow story. I loved how that worked. You can't use that tool though, overuse it, because that starts to quickly lose some steam. It's kind of like, we're going to do this again. Yeah. It's somebody else's dad or mom or whatever. I mean, how often can you use that without it being a groaner? At some point in time, you have to accept the fact that Bruce is a kid. He's going to grow up to be Batman. And right now we want to show why the Gotham Police Department have these amazing threats to fight and actually let people get to know Gotham as you know it. So you have to accept the fact that there's going to be some changes to this just because of the fact that Bruce is going to be younger than a lot of these characters when he comes in. And it'll be a new Gotham when he comes in. This really isn't about Bruce running around in Gotham. This is about Gordon and crew running around in Gotham in the city, like to your point, that Bruce will eventually need to help save. The casting, I think, of this show is so phenomenal. I don't know how they nail, like, Hugo Strange. I was like, oh my gosh, there's been some really creepy stories in comics revolving around Hugo Strange. That casting of Hugo Strange Like, I was scared for Oswald
Yes.
when I saw that. That was great casting.
And here's another funny thing about that one, because that actor was he played a priest on Oz. So he played this decent, good guy who was just he was in the middle of this prison who things were nasty stuff, but he still maintained who he was. And I was like, had I known that guy was playing Hugo Strange, I would have been like, I don't know about him. He's one of those really decent people. I don't know how you can pull that one off, but sure enough, I was like, whoa. And even just knowing all the stuff that he had done before, I was like, wow, he really has that great creep factor going on. I was absolutely just blown away by him. That's another one I am really looking forward to seeing where he goes.
I agree. I think that they've done and I like how there was a connection with Freeze, and he was like looking at, oh wow, these are experiments that we've been wanting to do all along. There's kind of a natural linkage between characters in this world that seems to happen by the goals of others that are involved. I can't wait to see where the whole Arkham thing goes, because they've been alluding to more and more going on at Arkham, and also that underground Wayne lab that has remained hidden. I like that there was Thomas Wayne knew about the experiments that were going on with the cryogenics, and they were shut down quietly. Why becomes the real question. And Thomas Wayne shut it down. That was what was said, if I remember correctly, that Thomas Wayne was the one that decided to shut them down. So who covered that up, and what drove Thomas Wayne to do that? Was it the point where the experiments started to happen on people, or there was a suggestion of it to happen on people? Thomas Wayne got wind and said, we're done. I love the way that this is playing out, because these are things that I think are tried and true to the Batman mythos. And it really has developed a very, very interesting world that has gone on here. And I like that the history predates Batman. I like that we got a chance to really focus on the city and some of these other characters. And I can accept where we have to really bend what we already know as readers in order to make that happen. Because thematically, all these characters, my gosh, the casting of Edward Nygma, I think, is just great. Oswald's great. Michael Chiklis coming in as the new boss, I think, has been great. Is there any? Here's an honest question I'm going to ask you. Is there any casting that you don't like on this show? Is there anybody that you're like standing and going, I wish they hadn't have made that choice? Because I'm not seeing it. I don't. Are you? Is there anybody where you're like, I really don't like the casting?
No, actually. I think I'm good on everything. I don't think I've had any where I'm like,
I liked what they did with Firefly. I thought the Firefly stuff was really cool.
That was absolutely wonderful. Because again, that's a character that's a nice reimagining of the character, a nice tweaking of her. And actually, I liked how, again, that great connection between her and Selena, and just everything, how she was, how she came to be Firefly. Now, who knows what they're doing to her in the secret lab. They're doing some freaky stuff there. So that character's not done yet. She's going to come back. So I think I'm good on everything here.
I am too. I don't mind the liberties that they've taken when they have. I really like the casting choices they made, because I think the characters play off very well with each other. It's really, I thought, moved at I think season 1 really kind of established the world. And season 2, they've been like, we're going to throw toys at you. But here's the thing. They don't do it with reckless abandon. They're story-driven. I like seeing more of the villains showing up. But I like that it's a story-driven process in the whole thing. And it's amazing how much story content has been delivered. We're only really at a season and a half right now. And
I know it seems longer. It seems like we've gotten more of a story than just 1.5 seasons.
Well, that mid-season finale, I think, made me feel like we got a whole season. now we're already in I was actually listening to Howard Stern this past week, and he was talking about Gotham and how excited that he was about the new episode and how much he liked the cast. And Ben McKenzie was on the wrap-up show, and one of the things he was just talking like this was season 3, and I totally get it, because I didn't expect the ending with the whole mayoral race and everything that was going on. I thought that was going to stretch out the entire season. I did not think that that would be a mid-season happening. And I give them credit for doing that the way that they did, because I don't know. I think some other shows would take that as a way of kind of going, you know what, that story can be stretched out the whole season. Let's save this next story or this next arc for season 3. They don't do that here. They really pack a lot of depth into this series, to the point where I thought the mid-season finale episode was very surprising and shocking.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Sure.
With Gordon actually pulling the trigger and Gordon putting him down, do you have an issue with Jim Gordon killing that guy in pretty much cold blood? Granted, he was killing a killer, but the level, how he did it and what he did, and do you have an issue with Jim Gordon doing that?
Yes. But I love it in the story. Because here's the thing. We're looking at a young Jim Gordon. This is not the guy who's Batman's confidant. We've seen situations where Gordon has allowed, like, look at Batman Begins. I love Batman Begins. But look what happened in Batman Begins. Jim Gordon was in a corrupt world and turned a blind eye to the corruption until he was given a doorway to stand up against it in the department, right? So I love Jim Gordon there. I do think that his relationships make him a better person. Events in his life. I like that he's fallible. I like that he's human. I like that I do feel he has a code, though, and there is a morality to him. And there is a catch-22 there of knowing, if I don't kill this guy, this is just going to continue. This is how corrupt Gotham is. Everyone that he's afraid of being hurt will be hurt. When I say I have an issue with it, do I think Jim made a moral mistake? Yes. Do I think he had another option? No. So it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, and that's what I like about it. If I'm making any sense at all, I see both sides of it. I see why he did what he did. Do I think that matches Jim Gordon in the comics? Not now, but it would.
Yeah.
At an earlier age. I could see it, him becoming the man that he is in the comics now because he went through that. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all there.
Oh, no. It makes sense. Like, you look at it as if, your friend doing this and you're like, dude, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And that's how when you say you have issues with it, that's what you're looking at. Now,
yes.
The story being told in front of you, you don't have an issue with the story being told.
Zero issue. Right.
Because this is a young Jim Gordon. And for me, I 100% see him doing that.
Yes.
And I understand why he would do it, just because of that young age, just because of he doesn't have the Batman to say, the no-kill Batman who actually looks at life, even though he's out of the shadows, he is still that beacon of life. He's still that beacon of light. And right now, Gordon doesn't have any possibility that things can get better in Gotham. He's got to take that action. He's got to pull the trigger. So for this Jim Gordon, with what he's doing to pull the trigger, story-wise, I don't have an issue with it. Now, personally, if he was my friend, I'd say, dude, that's wrong. We take the code. The code is protect and serve. It's not judge, jury, and executioner. That's when the cops start crossing that line. That's when you have issues. Now I want to see this affect Gordon, and it has affected Gordon. I want to see it continue to affect him. That's why I say when he does eventually confess to Leslie Tompkins, that's going to be the end of their relationship. I can see that. That's where I see the end of the relationship coming from, because of the confession.
Depending on how it happens. Here's the thing. I think the way that they've written this Leslie Tompkins, if handled the right way, he could salvage that relationship, if handled. Plus, there's a baby in the mix. But I don't. It's not necessarily the only way I see it going. I see a lot. Let me put it this way. I see a lot of possibilities in that story. That's what I find so interesting about it. I'm not disputing you, because I agree with you. I see other possibilities there too. I think what's interesting about this show is there's a lot of paths this can go on the journey, and not all of it's dependent on the two people being involved. It's also the outside influences and the outside sources. So sometimes your honest answer to those questions is based on who tells. How do you find out? Where does the reveal come from? And what is the reaction to the reveal? Does he try to further cover it up? Does he come clean? Is he the one that reveals it? Does somebody else reveal it? How does she find out? And what is the impact on why she found out? Did Barbara tell her? Does somebody else? There's so many variables and wild cards and twists and turns in that whole thing that, I don't know. I root for that relationship the same way I root for Bruce and Julie Madison in the comics. Yeah. You see that it's doomed, but you don't want it to be.
I know.
So, I'm loving the ride because of that.
Yeah, I know. And again, it's funny because this is a different universe. They could change stuff and they could keep them together, but
they already are. They already are changing stuff. So, we have to remember that. There's already been, because of the time issue that you've already mentioned, that you sometimes question, that is something that will always be an issue. So,
yeah, so they could possibly keep these two together. I in my head, I don't see it happening just because I am part pessimistic, but it could happen.
Right. Oof. I don't know. It's such a great show, and I'm just having so much fun.
I know. I'm very happy with this. I think this is one of those where I didn't realize how much I missed it while it was gone. Because I was watching the other shows. I had everything else. I'm watching this. I got my gold shows. I got all this other stuff that I'm going through. But when that Gotham hit, I was like, oh, let me catch it. Like, oh my God. And once again, it just pulls you right back in. And I can't wait for the return of Fish. Because Fish ain't dead.
Right.
She just fell off a building and was shot. That ain't enough to kill her.
Right.
Especially with Butch running things,
Yeah, what a great show it's been so far. Yeah. This is such a great time for quality geek television. We'll have to talk on an upcoming episode about iZombie, because it's the only show that we haven't really touched on this wave. And then I would like to, at the end of the seasons for all of them, to do an episode revolving around the season wrap-ups of all of these programs, at the end of this year. Just because, what a great time it is. We talk about the movies and how exciting that is, but it's kind of like this great lead up. Who would have thought, so this is like the kickoff episode for our month of 10-year anniversary episodes, right? And this would actually be the first one in that. Who would have thunk when we started all this that there would be this many DC-related shows on television? A Batman versus Superman movie, an animated film, all coming out in the same month. On top of the fact that we're going to be looking at a Rebirth launch that's coming down. The amount of things that are going on right now are absolutely stellar in the world of DC. So, I don't know. We're 460 shows in to this thing that we've been doing after 10 years of doing it. And I had no idea all this cool stuff was going to be happening. It's funny, you and I, based on, I'm taking 2 classes right now on top of the fact that my job has more responsibilities. You've got more responsibilities at your job. Our ability to get together as often as we used to podcast has been shrunk, for lack of a better word. And yet we're still getting together at least 3 or 4 times a month to do podcast episodes because we want to talk about this stuff because of how cool it is. And I love that. I love that we do this show not out of obligation. And I don't mean that in any way diminishing our audience anyway. I think it's better for our audience if we're doing this because it's fun and we still enjoy this and it's genuine. And that really is what it is. I was so excited to sit down today and start talking about all this stuff just because this is my outlet to kind of just kind of say, wow, cool geek stuff. And that the part has been really, really fun for me on the show. So it's great 10 years in that, what's on the horizon is staggering. There's actually too much stuff to get to.
And think about it, even just going beyond this year. We've got more stuff planning coming down the line with some Batman movies. We've got a Wonder Woman movie, an Aquaman movie. We've got a Justice League movie. All these things they're moving towards that direction. When we first started doing this podcast, we had the X movies that were out. They had, Captain America and all these things. They were like, hey, maybe wonder if they could do DC could do a Superman movie. If DC could do a Justice League movie. And they always kept talking about, oh, that's not going to happen. That's not going to. And it's happening. This stuff is coming down the line. We're going to get that stuff. And there's been just so much amazing stuff in these years that now we're still continuing. We're still chugging on down the line.
Yeah. It's an exciting time. I'm actually excited for. It's funny as you look at a show and start saying to yourself, "Well, we've been doing this for a decade. Do you keep going with it, or is it time to kind of go? Well, we've done this for 10 years. It's time to do something else." I'm like, I don't know how I could stop. There's too much stuff going on. I'm like really excited. I would actually miss this if if we stopped now, especially with everything going on. Like I'm sitting here, I'm like, boy, the next decade's gonna be kind of fun, and I think that's where that gets exciting. It's one of the reasons why I get so, I think, protective of the comic product, because I just think everything has been so interesting to read lately. The TV's been so great. The film has been so interesting, with what's coming up with that. It looks like we're going to get a Cyborg movie out of this whole thing. Wow, is that cool?
Oh, how awesome is that?
Yeah, all the stuff that's happening right here is just phenomenal. So, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing. I can't wait for this month's recordings, too. At the end of the show, we'll kind of give you kind of an outline of where things are going podcast episode-wise. We've got a lot of cool things coming down the pike for you that we're excited for.
Now I can get out of here.
I want to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434. Or Dr. Norge on Skype. We do have a few voicemails in the queue. We are going to be getting to all of them, so don't worry if you called in. We're going to be getting those on the show. If not on our next episode, we'll definitely be the one afterwards. But we definitely want you a part of the podcast. Please feel free to keep calling in because we will do a voicemail catch-up and get to all of them. We love airing your comments on the podcast. Want to remind everyone about our show website, ragingbullets.com. It's where you can find news about where the show is headed. And I'll correct the episode number. I actually put 450, 451, 452 for our episodes, and it's actually the 460s that we're in right now. But coming up this month, we are going to be joined once again by Freddie E. Williams II, and we're going to take a look at Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's going to be our next episode, so I'm excited about that. We are also going to be joined by Alan Pasalacqua, a longtime friend of the show and colorist extraordinaire, as he's going to talk about some of the work that he did on Batman Eternal. Later in the month, we are going to be doing our anniversary episode, and we are going to be doing Wonder Woman the contest, but we're going to do the whole shebang where we take a look at the contest, the fall of the Amazon, that whole story arc that happened back in the day by William Messner Loebs and Mike Deodato. So we're going to go all the way from its 90 to 100, I think were the issues, including issue number 0. So we were trying to figure out an interesting episode to do. We've been wanting to do this since the start of the podcast, so I think it's about time we actually get to this particular story arc. I'm excited to do this one. This one is a really exciting one. I think you've read some of the issues of this, right, Jim? But not the whole.
Yeah, I've read some of it, but not because we talked about this a long time ago, and I was able to get my hands on it and read some of it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a cool talk, and then it never happened. And we're like, and then so it only took us 10 years to get this done. Okay.
Well, see, it's well worth it. This is one of those storylines that I've been really excited to talk about, and you were the one that said we should do something nutty, and I'm like, okay, strap in. We're actually doing all of those issues, and we're gonna talk about the whole story as a complete arc. So if you've read that previously, feel free to crack out your issues and join us. Otherwise, feel free to grab the issues of the trades. I know some of it's out of print, but all of it's available on Comixology. So there's a way to get it that way. So if you're really looking for those issues and you've never read them before, they're all available there. So I want to make sure everyone has a chance. Stop by your local comic book shop and grab them. But it's going to be 90 to 100 and issue 0 of Wonder Woman. So I'm really excited to do this one. And then we're also going to be doing a Batman v Superman episode. Coming up in April, we're going to be having, we're going to do a couple pop culture and whatnots. We're going to have Chad Saccone join us again from Action Labs to talk about the upcoming Actionverse that they're developing there, which is going to be kind of cool. We're also going to have longtime friend of the show, Ted Sikora, from Apama and actually Hero Tomorrow fame, join us to talk about the upcoming Apama movie that they're going to be working on. So we're going to have him back on, and we're also going to talk about the comic book Apama. So those are going to be a couple things in there, as well as the many DC episodes that we're going to have. So we've got a lot of stuff planned. Obviously, we're not prepared to stop anytime soon because there's a lot of cool stuff that we want to talk about. So I'm very, very excited for those episodes. And those do start in the 460s. I want one of our listeners said, "Is this going to be episode 450 Bubblicious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I kind of did rush that out. I was excited to get the content posted, but no, that wasn't nitpicky. It was I goofed." All right. So anyway, besides that, there's our wonderful Facebook group community, which I adore. We also have a Facebook fan page. We are available on Google+. There's a Twitter linked from our show webpage. So however you want to get a hold of information about the show, we like to get connected with you. Jim, we are sponsored this episode by, once again, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBService.com?
We got, of course, bundles. They're continuing their support of the Vertigo line. All 12 new Vertigo for 50% off, only $23.88. And they got a really cool variant cover bundle, 11 different titles, 45% off each, only $22.44.
Over at InStockTrades.com, besides the cool deals of the week that they're offering, they also have the new releases, the Harley Quinn and Power Girl trade paperback. It's 42% off, only $8.69. The Injustice Gods Among Us, Year 1, complete collection, 42% off, only $14.49. Superman Unchained trade paperback, 42% off, only $14.49. This is a place to go for deals. I know I like to catch up on storylines that I've missed throughout comics, and they have every comic company represented that you can possibly imagine. They are regularly running clearance specials, so be sure to check all of the amazing deals they have. They have deals on the select clearance sales up to 70% off, so constantly adding new titles to that list, and it's a great way to save money and do more reading. So that's InStockTrades.com. I want to thank them once again for supporting us for the last decade. Jim, our next episode, we're going to be joined by longtime friend of the show, Freddie E. Williams II, as we talk about Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And actually, that will be up this week. We're going to be doing that recording with Freddie on Tuesday, and our plan is to have that up on Thursday, so that way you can enjoy the episode with us. So we will see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend, Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.